Hello, everybody. How are we doing? Okay, so the stream is going to be a little bit different than usual. I'm going to be reacting to a debate essentially between Destiny and someone I follow on TikTok. His name is Matt Dearden. He is a content creator. He's an attorney, and he is also a constitutional scholar. Very smart man. So I want to break down this discussion. I haven't watched any of it. It's totally a blind reaction to it. But I kind of want to see how it goes. Hello, Sherry. How you doing? Good to see you. The lovely Sherry is here. Hello there. So as I said, it's a long discussion. I know these aren't like everyone's favorite, but again, I appreciate this person for the hard work that he does. He breaks down a lot of conversations at length and discusses topics that are relevant, like that are in the zeitgeist. And then he will, like I say, he'll talk to them. He'll talk about them at length in ways that people just don't usually. So, excuse me. What's up, Tim? Great to see you, man. Tim Hayes in the chat. Good to see you, sir. Yeah, I actually had an interesting thing I might want to write to regarding a lot of this stuff because of how I feel a lot of the discourse kind of goes nowadays. There's not a whole lot of it feels like content is meant to divide people, not necessarily educate or bring people together. As I feel like that's the sort of time that we're in, and it's not necessarily sequestered to politics. It's culture, entertainment. It's everything. The stuff that's a little bit more low engagement, it tends to be things that go more into depth in things. Not all, like there are definitely channels out there who succeed and do really well by explaining things again at length. And anyways, I try to offer, you guys know, I'm trying to offer people a more in-depth explanation of things and also a more middle ground reaction to things as I see them. So we're going to take a look at this video. Hopefully you guys will be able to see everything. Let me pull it up here in just a sec. Got to figure out how to produce. I think we have to go to this screen. He's able to see. Oh no, I have to go to. Can you get? Yeah, wait. Why can't you see that? This is very weird. This new scenes thing, I don't like at all. Media presentation? Is that what we do? No. It's embarrassing. Okay, can I just go here? Why isn't it showing up? Oh. Wow. This guy. First time. It's definitely my first time. Okay. You know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to move myself over here. Make myself bigger. I just want one person though. I don't really care about chat and stuff, so we'll put it like this. Okay. Let's go here. Perfect. Okay. I think we got it finally. All right. I'm going to be listening to this, reacting to it. Feel free to also shoot me questions, and I can if something pops up that you want to hear more about or see, please let me know.
Yeah. All right. Well, did you have a particular spot that you wanted to? Oh, wait, real quick. Did you say who you were on TikTok? That's where you post the majority of your content, right?
Yeah, I'm Matt Dearden 49. I have some fake accounts out there, as I'm sure you're familiar with, but yeah, that's the main one.
Okay. What did you have
a
particular thing in mind you wanted to chat about, or?
Yeah, I did. So I've watched a lot of your stuff over the years, and I recently watched your interview with Alex O'Connor, and I thought it was really good from a few months ago. And you brought up something on there that really resonated with me, and I wanted you to expand upon it a little bit. What you had said specifically was about how the right, particularly the right in 2024-25, doesn't have a lot of standard bearers ideologically. And because they don't have that, they're not able to discuss policy. And you've said that essentially all of the arguments with the right now occur kind of at the culture war level. And there's just back and forth, mudslinging back and forth. And so you have to engage at that level in order to even get down to any of the actual policy stuff. And
see, what a really cool place to start. This was something that inspired me to maybe write an article, because I agree here. I agree that, and it's not just the right, but the right, especially now that they've sort of taken the White House and like all three branches of government. What I see happening is this, like, everyone's engaging in this like culture war like level of discourse. Like, it's not policy that they're discussing, and there's not even like a wing of the news that will bring like real, like, hey, this is what's actually going on. Everything's done in like a meme form, which I think was kind of funny, like during the Biden administration, maybe because we're like dealing with someone in like mental decline, so we're just like, oh, clown world. But now that like we're supposed to be taking things seriously and getting back on track, it's like nobody is getting there. Like Elon's still like, I am meme or whatever it is that he says. Like, we have to get to a place where we're really discussing policy. We need someone to like guide us through this, and like, okay, these are our, like he says, standard bearers. Tim says, funny he chose to debate a conservative who doesn't agree with MAGA. I heard Destiny isn't very smart. Destiny is a master of his craft in that he knows how to present his arguments in weasel around his arguments. He's not unintelligent. He knows how to speak to people, and it can be difficult to combat someone who is like good at their craft, right? Like he knows what he knows. He's well read on things. So Matt is someone like myself who is more politically homeless. He has conservative ideas. He has liberal ideas. If you followed him on TikTok, you would see like he goes into much detail about what he believes in. He's broken down his most liberal ideals. He's broken down his most conservative. So he's a very, very well spoken, very intelligent person.
Most of the front runners right now, the Tim Pools, pretty much the entire cast of the Daily Wire, Candace Owens, many others, they can't engage any deeper than the mudslinging. And I think that's true. And I lean conservative. I do not consider myself MAGA whatsoever, but I think that's an accurate picture right now of much of the right. And it's a picture of some of the left too. Don't get me wrong. For sure, there's people out there. But can you expand on that a little bit? Because I think it's just an interesting starting point.
I mean, I feel like one thing that the right has been able to do, I would say they stumbled into it more than anything else with Trump, is I feel like right now politics is a lot about capturing attention and how much you can basically stay in front of somebody's eyes. Ironically enough, it's kind of how being a YouTuber or streamer works. You know, the more that you post content, the more you're spending time live, the more people see you and you're relevant and people just keep watching you. I think that Trump is really good at doing that just because he's so attention hungry. So he's tweeting all the time. He's truthing all the time. He's doing interviews. He's constantly making statements and getting up to stuff. And I think that when you have a lot of attention, now when you have that attention, when you're putting issues in front of people, if you talk to an ordinary worker about the amount of aid that we should send to Ukraine or what good fiscal policy is or whatever, like nobody thinks much or cares about that. Whereas if you start invoking like the trans athlete stuff or whatever culture wars issues, or if you speak about trade wars in a more narrative format, like these countries are robbing us, it just like drives people's, I guess, excitement up for politics and it gets you on their side more. So and it used to be that people would kind of do that, but at least on the back end of things, there'd be policy debate going on. But now it feels like the culture war stuff has literally taken over the back end, as we've seen today with these unbelievable terrorists that I guess have actually gone through now.
Yeah, I agree and I disagree. I think the problem is there's little specificity to what these things are. I hear people talk about all of these things. The problem is like you get these interesting like breakdowns of like how the war in Ukraine starts or why that Russia invaded Crimea. Like Crimea is a weird one. I watched this whole video the other day about how like Crimea was essentially under this treaty that like if its government defaulted, then Russia would take it back. And that's essentially what happened, is that all of the politicians essentially walked out and were like, we're out of here. We're done. So Russia technically had all of the right to go in there and like retake it. Ukraine felt differently, but on a technical level, it reverted to Russia because they defaulted. Their government defaulted. But it's not something that anyone talks about, and you have to find these like niche YouTubers or niche TikTokers that talk about it. And then if you do like bring that up, you're like a weird conspiracy theorist. So I do see people talking about these things, Ukraine, culture war stuff, but there's little that people like really break down to be like, okay, this is what's really happening. Destiny used to be a conservative Christian though, and he seems to be one that just bent the knee to liberal views just to be popular. I don't know if that's true. I think he just did the reverse of a lot of people in like 2018. Like he just, went the other way. He just believes that it's better to be more progressive and to be way more liberal, Just my opinion that he bent the knee to liberal. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to tell. What's up, Devastator? Good to see you, man.
Yeah, I think you're right in many respects. And a lot of the people that argued for these conservative oriented, I should say, policies over the years gave up so much ground intellectually the moment Trump took office, because especially the second term, because he started passing or instituting all of these executive orders, which would go against any type of limited government belief, any type of, hey, we're going to limit the power of this branch or any separation of powers. And they've said, let's put him on Mount Rushmore now. And so I think that's going to be hard to recover from for a lot of the right.
Yeah,
we saw Matt Walsh.
Time like taking. I don't know if I'll be able to take any conservative debater seriously for the next like 10 years. Just seeing how insane this presidency has been in the first month, and then I don't know if you're going to break up with Walsh, but for Walsh and Shapiro, I remember in 2016 reading just the most condemnatory articles from them about how they would never vote for somebody like Donald Trump, and how he was just he goes against everything a Christian should believe in, and his rhetoric is insane. And to see the Republican point of view change based on how likely it is that Trump is going to be in office again is so.
Well, it's interesting because Shapiro did bring that up in one of his interviews. I forget who it was with. I think it was with Chris Williamson. He talks about how he was not going. He had no intention and was actually against Trump in 2016. And that the reason it all changed and why he was like basically advocating for him and like campaigning for him now was because he saw what he was capable of doing government wise, and it became like, oh, this is, it's a merit based thing. Like I would like to see him. I would like to see him do more of what he did then. So, and to that end, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. For some reason, people get all up in their feelings about people learning, good or bad. So
sad to me. Like,
what do you think a conservative is? Like, what would be your definition of conservatism as an ideology? Not maybe as it exists in 2025, but what it is traditionally.
What it is traditionally, man, I'm sure that's evolved over time a lot. I guess when I grow up, my really macro view of liberals versus conservatives is basically just who has the responsibility to take care of the people around them. It feels like liberals have this belief that the government has the ability to take resources from and distribute them in the most efficient way possible to a large group of people, some that might be left behind otherwise. And conservatives feel more that people in their own communities have a better ability to distribute help in a variety of ways to the people around them, because these are people you care about personally. You distribute your own money better. You don't need some algorithm or bureaucracy to do it for you. That's like a very macro level difference, I think, in the approach between both.
But who do you think gives government that power? Like, who gives government the ability to choose what to do with its resources, or what rights to prioritize or even take or remove?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on how philosophical you want to be with that question. I mean, we could say on one level, the Constitution gives that ability. We could say on another level, the Constitution authorizes Congress to create laws that would give them that ability. We could say on another level, it all comes from the people ultimately, because we could always coup the government. I don't know, I guess what exactly you're asking.
Well, a lot of people would say that rights themselves come from God, and for example, the Declaration of Independence alludes to that. I would imagine that's probably not your perspective.
I don't think it's relevant whether you think your rights come from God or not. I mean, the government is there to create it to protect whatever rights we have. But regardless of if you think they come from God or not, I don't know if that would influence too much what you think government's role should be.
Right. And I think even when someone like Thomas Jefferson said that in the Declaration, he's not making any type of truth claim. He's using it as a rhetorical document to advance his position, which they should be able to release themselves from Britain.
I think that's fair.
My point is, I think that what conservatism is based in is probably this idea that.
I also think this is good that Matt is asking him, like, okay, let's define our terms in some small respect. And so he understands, like, now Destiny understands where Matt is coming from and where he's sort of pulling this thread from.
There should be a limited government with power in certain spheres. And once that power expands over those certain spheres, there should be consequences.
And I also believe that Matt is a pretty dynamic thinker, and that this is meant to set up his arguments down the line. Whereas I do think that Destiny does the same thing, but he can be a tad more reactionary. And this is one of the things he's really good at, is that he's good to think and talk on his feet and to switch as needed. So as people pivot to things that they want to talk about, he's good at pivoting back or pivoting to something that he is strong in. And I'm sure he'll do it here. Go Cat. Sorry, I don't want to deal with you right now.
Is from the people that put the people in power, initially. And so I think that would, I don't know, I think that would align for the most part with a lot of what the founders believed, right? So these founders such as, Madison, Hamilton, or John Jay, who wrote the Federalist Papers, they were like, we need a powerful government, but it needs to operate within certain limits, within, checks and balances, separation of powers, pulling on these ideas of Locke and others, and saying, if the government goes beyond that, though, the people have a right to, overthrow the government or adjust the government in such a way that it.
And I think this is where he's trying to make the case of like how he's not MAGA. If I'm guessing, like Matt's talking like this to sort of like, this is what I think the idea of conservatism was. and where it started. This is why I'm not like MAGA, and also making the case that Donald Trump is not a conservative. He is a liberal, as he like has expanded executive powers and made government like bigger in its own way. And again, he'll probably get into that as he talks more.
It is actually in place to protect those rights. And I think that that's actually being turned on its head with Trump, because the idea now is that now that we are in power and we have kind of this nationalist populist movement with Trump right now, the government can do whatever it needs to do to accomplish what Trump believes are legitimate ends. And you see huge swaths of the population just agreeing with that, who formerly would have held to these more conservative limited government mandates, have been around for, I would argue, decades. I mean, don't you think it's been tossed on its head a little bit?
A little bit, maybe. I think the issue is that what's happened is I feel like we don't really have any defenders of democracy, defenders of like liberal democracy, liberal not.
I'll respond to this note, but Donald Trump is pretty much pushing conservative views for the most part. He might be conservative views, but the power, what I'm saying is the power of the executive branch and the government itself is not at all within the conservative bounds. And as Matt was just saying, like, 10, 20 years ago, the same people would have been like, are you kidding me? Like there's way too much government here. We need to reel it in. There are things that haven't, but but Matt believes by and large that like we've gotten to a point where the government's getting too big.
Because the left is always deemed liberal order, then you end up in this world where everything is permissible as long as it's advancing your side's interests. So says, I don't believe in this thing when it's used against me, but I do believe in it when it's used against the other side.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. So who's out there right now on either the left or the right that you admire and is actually advancing these concepts ideologically and not just from a tit for tat type of thing at the surface level?
I don't know.
Buddy?
I literally just tweeted like an hour ago or 2 hours ago that like the Democrats need to have a strong, vocal, like obvious person who is kind of serving as this counterposition to Donald Trump right now. And I feel like we don't have that strong voice right now.
Yeah.
I feel like it doesn't exist at this
100%. You do not.
Who's been the best Democrat candidate for president in your lifetime?
This is gonna be really unpopular, but for all the issues with his age, I thought that Biden did a phenomenal job in office. I think he tried really hard to do that spirit of the country to bring us together. There was a ton of joint legislation passed. He did his best to avoid demonizing or attacking the other side. Even in that speech that they try to rip that quote from with the red background, where he talks about MAGA Republicans, like he even says in the next line, he doesn't even think a majority of the Republicans are MAGA Republicans, and he's talking about the election deniers, like he specifies that. I think that Biden did a phenomenal job, given how crazy the hand he was dealt, I guess. But
what I'll say, Tim, is you should look more into Matt Dearden. He's not full of shit. Matt's a very dynamic, like I said, he's a very dynamic thinker. I've been following him for the better part of a year, maybe more now, and listen to a lot of his stuff. You might not agree with him, but he is very intelligent. He understands constitutional law. He's an attorney. He does this every single day. And I mean, the thing is you got to remember, like, Destiny is not stupid. He is well read as well. I mean, he believes what he believes. I don't necessarily totally disagree with him, but Biden though, I think it's an interesting pick. So,
what about Obama?
I was younger, and I'm very hesitant to rely on my memory now for anything before I started like studying stuff with more depth. I feel like Obama did a decent job. Like, I appreciate the ACA. McConnell made it obviously really hard for anything to happen once he lost his congressional power once Obama lost his any majorities in Congress. But I don't know if I would say like Obama was a phenomenal president or did an amazing job, but yeah.
Obama had some really great charisma.
I think a lot of what you said makes sense for sure. I think it's hard because, like you said, in the past decade, conservatives have become the anti-government party. And it's anything that the government does is the deep state or it's the swamp and it needs to be drained.
Agreed.
And that's never been what conservatism is. I think conservatism has always wanted to play within the limits of what's been given as the government. But I don't think governmental actions are inherently wrong. And I don't even think Reagan would have thought that. I think that Reagan would have spoken much more to a broader view of the good of government. And
the interesting thing I can tell, I mean, Destiny is someone who needs to like move around a lot, and you can tell he's like anxious to like, he's almost like bored by this. It seems. So I'm really interested to see where it goes because Matt is a very level-headed person. He's not necessarily combative. He's not gonna give him the satisfaction I think other people would give him. I mean, people just don't like him. You know, they don't like him because of his lifestyle. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, that's certainly, I think what it comes down to is a lot of people, it's just an us versus them thing. Well, he's the exact opposite of me. So he's not intelligent. He's not living his life the way I think he should live. I don't think that Destiny has I don't think he's unintelligent. I do think he's an intelligent person, but he's someone that's on the opposite political spectrum. He's going to use his intelligence in a way that we don't particularly care for. You know, that's the bottom line.
It's come to the point that in the last 10 years, I've seen a complete shift in the way that conservatives have viewed government.
Sure.
As a base negative.
Yeah, and I think Trump even recently has now finally begun to tear into Reagan as well, where what did he say? That he thought Reagan was dumb on tariffs or something? Or was it something different? He started to criticize Reagan's view on things, and it's like, okay, geez, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and Reagan probably wasn't as good of president as a lot of conservatives remember him to be, but I think he did speak pretty effectively to kind of the conservative movement as a whole. And obviously he had to be more hawkish than a lot of conservatives probably would have liked just with the ending of the Cold War. But he was, you know, a pretty vanilla politician in many aspects, I think. And he accomplished some good things. He rode on the wave of some good economics. But at the end of the day, he's probably not a god.
Yeah, Destiny's hella bored.
I don't know enough. I haven't studied any of it in depth, so I can only give like surface level takes on it, but sure.
Yeah. So is there anything that you've liked about Trump's first 4 to 6 weeks in office?
Ooh,
probably not. No.
Anything?
I think it's been beyond disastrous so far. I don't think anybody would have guessed it would have been quite as chaotic as it's been so far. There might
be
of
his appointments, or
I mean, like the only one that was like barely normalish would have been Rubio, but Rubio is totally sold out now to Trump's view on everything as well. So I don't know. What are some things that you think I should be in favor of or should be happy with?
I mean, he's definitely taken a hammer to a lot of stuff with his executive orders. So I don't love that, even if I can appreciate some of the end goals.
Oh, wait, I can give two. Getting rid of the penny, I guess, is good. That seemed like a waste of money.
Yeah.
And maybe the paper straw thing. I don't know. I feel like it's kind of silly for an executive order on that, but I don't like paper straws. But there you go. There's two, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel about the tariff stuff going on with the 25% on Mexico, Canada today?
I think that on paper, it's kind of boring. The stock market stuff is exciting to follow, but I feel like it's probably some of the saddest stuff that we've ever gone through. I feel like everybody was wondering what the fighting would look like between Russia and China. And now we find ourselves a month into his presidency, and the biggest fights we are having are with our allies over quasi acts of war, these like crazy tariffs between the EU. I think right now, as it stands, we have larger tariffs against our trading partners than we do against China. I don't understand why. Nothing about the biggest issue that I've had with Trump is I don't have like a theory of mind for him to understand like what his coherent vision is of America and the world. Like, let's say that we hate.
I don't think he doesn't have one.
Yeah, unfortunately,
I really don't. I don't think he has one.
Like if you were going to
the tariff like fights is what he's talking about. Like we're allies with Mexico and Canada, but yet we're imposing tariffs on them and it's causing like issues. And as of this moment, it's it's causing a bit of strife. So, I mean, he's embellishing in detail a little bit, and the thing you have to understand about Matt is that he's giving him the benefit of the doubt rather than combat him on his language. He's letting him talk and get it out and explain himself, because Destiny's not wrong in this case. We're imposing tariffs on our allies, and I'm sure there's an end game. But what Destiny's explaining is, I don't understand why this is the case, and I don't know what his vision is and what we look like on the world stage, and how this is going to put us in that position. Yeah, but sometimes that's not always the answer, unfortunately. Tim, I think the problem is that people spend a lot of time thinking, and I've said this before. By the way, I'm a millennial. Easy there. The problem is, and I've said this before, you can't headbutt every single problem that you come against. And when you're in a debate like this, this honestly isn't necessarily a debate. It's a discussion. And these can be much more fruitful. And this is how you get through to people, even the people who are on the fence, right? I mean, Matt's not going to convince Destiny of anything. But what Matt could do, and what I try to do it occasionally, is reach across the aisle to the people who might be in chat. That's the point of discussions like this. It's not to freak out on people as soon as you hear them say a particular thing that might be wrong, or how you want them to say it. Because then you get into semantic arguments about the language he's using and not the actual idea itself. So that's why I mean, Matt's doing a good job in this case.
Fighting with China and fighting with Europe and fighting with Russia and everybody else. Okay, fine. But then why would you make such an enemy out of Canada and Mexico? These are going to be your new most important friends if we're going to, fight the rest of the world, you would think. But
yeah. No, I agree. I was under the impression for a while that he was just solely trying to use those numbers as leverage. And I'm hopeful there'll still be a very short-term tariffs to kind of try to bring them to the table to rediscuss the Mexico, US, Canada agreement or something like that. But
but even that position is crazy, right? Like, this was an agreement that he negotiated 5 years ago. Why would it be that I'm going to bring out basically the nuclear trade options to renegotiate a deal? Couldn't he have just tried to approach them in a conversation first?
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but that's not Trump. This is what he did all throughout his first term. He would throw out these wild threats, especially to countries that, other countries, and he'd just say, "Hey, this is," and he'd use it as an anchor in his negotiation, and he'd move forward. Whether it's a wise strategy or not, I mean, that's
I don't consider Mexico and Canada friends. Their politicians suck more than ours do. That doesn't really mean much. Mexico and Canada are our allies through and through. We don't. I mean, we have NAFTA, which you can argue is horrible, but they have been our biggest allies for a long time, and of course the EU is our allies. But we're neighbors. They're definitely our allies. You might not like their politicians, and that's fine. But in Mexico isn't their cartels, right? That doesn't define them. What's up, Andreas? Good to see you, man. So yeah, I mean, yes, Mexico has cartels, but yeah.
He did negotiate that agreement to replace NAFTA, but it was set for, I think, renegotiation next year anyways, in 2026. So I think he just wants to start off and renegotiate it again.
Yeah, I guess, but I don't know.
Yeah, but Mexico wasn't against the stay in Mexico agreement when Trump did it. They weren't against it. They were that was something they did. It's not like their politicians are dumping people onto our soil, is all I mean. So a lot of those Ukrainian weapons ended up in the hands of cartels. I was just talking to a friend of mine in Texas who does borders. Oh, damn. A lot of those. That came through twice.
I don't know where this, I don't know if it's because it's just been normalized, but this crazy, I call this the retard defense, where Trump can basically do whatever and it's justified as some basis of negotiation. I feel like Trump could say, we've got a lot of extra nukes that we need to unload. Maybe they'll go to Mexico City, maybe they'll go to Toronto and Vancouver. But I'm only saying this as a negotiating tactic. And Republicans be like, well, I mean, he's not actually going to do it. And it does bring them to the table. Yeah, but it's destroying our reputation and it's destroying our relationships with these like historic friends and allies.
The problem too, but what the reverse of this is that we've had politicians do this forever. It doesn't mean it's right, but like, you know, if people make excuses for Obama dropping, using drones and killing how many innocent people through his terms, oh well, it's just collateral damage. This is what happens. But he's still a nice guy, It's like, well, just because you say something like super nice and you're charismatic doesn't, especially in that case, like maybe maybe not.
Of ours. Why would we ever do this? Even if he did manage to negotiate something after these threats and after these tariffs, it's still bad. It's still on the net, not good. We probably could have negotiated it anyway.
No, you're probably right. And I've said before, I think it might backfire on him, and we'll see. I didn't even think he was actually
It's already backfired. We've already done the tariffs. Like the damage is already done. There's no way of undoing this damage now. Now we've just suffered some long-term reputational harm, even if we negotiate.
I'm not convinced, and this is again where his own political bias gets in the way. Tariffs have different effects, and they're not always negative. They don't, yes, they might raise prices, but there's reasons that prices go up and down all of the time. There's no necessarily indication that this is a long-term negative to our reputation. But, again, would I rather not see it? Sure. Is he necessarily wrong? No, but I don't know. But this is the emotional side of Destiny. This is his bread and butter. You get him going and talking fast enough, and now he's on a roll.
Something good after this. It's still been a net bad for everybody. The fact that we're even wasting time talking about this as a country, and that with Canada and Mexico and now the entire European Union stressing over it, this is all like a net bad for our reputation. No,
I think you're probably right. Overall, I think it is a net bad for the country. But do you think, though, that he has a future plan related to this, or is he just all making it up as he goes? Is he just hoping that it?
I can't see any future plan. I don't know. I don't know what he hasn't even made any demands. Sorry, good.
Well, he's made some vague demands. Like he said, I want Mexico to do better on the border, and he's mentioned fentanyl, but no specific demands.
Well,
right? At least I've not seen any.
But that's bullshit, right? Like in order for the National Emergencies Act to give him the ability to leverage these, or to these tariffs, he has to have a national emergency, right? So that's why he did the border thing in the north and the border in the south. But we're not really worried about fentanyl coming from Canada, right? Like it's not like a real thing. He's just saying it for the legal justification to do economic warfare.
Right. You're probably right, but at the end of the day, you have to hope.
Hold on, I don't understand this. Wait. No. I'm probably right. I'm definitely right. Do you think that we're so concerned with fentanyl from Canada that we're ready to nuke our relationship with them? Okay. So I'm definitely right. There's no way there's a coherent thought there outside of economic warfare.
But my point is, do you think there's a second act? Do you think? And I don't know this. I don't know. I truly don't. And I think it's a mistake. It obviously hurts both countries. But
a very worst thing about our country that people don't, I think, realize is that economic warfare has been something like at the literal forefront of like what we do, of how we push ourselves like out into the world and how we establish dominance in other countries is economic warfare. It is like the number one thing that we've always done. There's a brilliant book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman that everyone should read. It goes into depth of how we did it. And we do it through economic means, through creating disasters, upending governments, removing people, installing our own dictators. It is truly insane. And most people have no clue that this is what we do. It is far more nefarious than saying, oh, there's WMDs in Iraq, I think. I mean, to the point of using jackals to because there's people who resist, there's countries who resist, and they just send in jackals to remove these leaders who won't bend the knee to the US. And actually the Mike Benz episode of Joe Rogan goes into even more detail about how U.S. aid has been involved with those things. So, and I'm sure, Andreas, you've probably gone down this route or at least known this for a long time. Andreas says he loves that book. Yeah, Confessions of an Economic Hitman is crazy. I've read it twice. What the hell is Destiny talking about? Fentanyl. So he's saying that they're trying to invoke like this, that there's an economic issues or warfare. So we're going to, it allows him to act the way Trump wants. So
you think there's a second act to this, or do you think it's just, hey, indefinite 25% tariffs on our two neighbors?
I think that at some point, if the markets continue to slide, if prices go up, and if he starts to become politically unviable, and it has to be him, not other Republicans, because Trump doesn't care if other people lose elections. But if Trump becomes politically unviable, if the stock market slides and he's getting bad coverage, he's seeing too many mean tweets at him, then I think he'll go back to it. And I think what will happen is he'll renegotiate something that basically looks exactly like it was before, like he did last time, and he'll call it a win, and we'll go back to the status quo, except now with our reputation harmed.
Do you think reputation on the world stage is important?
Yeah, for sure.
In what sense? I'm not disagreeing. I'm just asking in what, like, how important should it be for a president to have a good reputation on the world stage?
I feel like it's essential because I feel like it's what gives you the ability to leverage. You're leveraging your reputation as a form of soft power instead of doing like actual. It would still be soft power or hard power things like doing tariffs or doing, actual like kinetic strikes on people. Like I feel like reputation is good because then we can avoid stuff like this. If you have a good reputation with leaders, you can sit down, you can have negotiations without having to do crazy tariffs or attack people first.
Yeah, the problem is like this logic is sound to a point because, and like I agree, but and this is my own opinion that like we're still the largest, one of the largest economies in the world. Like the dollar is the world currency. Like it won't always be like that if we keep doing what we're doing, but as of this moment, as of right now, and in our lifetime, like we are the dominant economy, and people will come to us, and it like that is honestly what's driving this, not how people feel about us. Like he's mean, like no, but it doesn't really matter when at the end of the day, like the dominant economy and like our currency being the world currency, like that just kind of puts us where we need to be, for better or for worse. It certainly helps that people view us in a good light, or that people look at Trump as a leader who's thinking about the rest of the world, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're somehow screwed in the long run.
Basically, economically.
Do you think Trump's reputation is as bad internationally as people say?
Well,
No.
Maybe not with North Korea, not with Putin, not with Orban, but I think with Europe, I think that it's possible we've already done irreparable harm after that Vance speech. And with Canada and Mexico, I think our reputation is severely harmed. Yes, I think our reputation right now is probably incredibly bad. Why do you not?
Yeah, but I think it wasn't always the best with Biden either. So I think that I think he was seen as a little bit of a weak leader. I don't have necessarily any hard data to show that, but just by perception alone, even in his own country, I feel like there was that going on a little bit internationally, don't you think?
In what sense?
Just even the age thing. I think that was a big deal.
Oh, no, but I mean, like, what would I look to? Because Biden was able to cobble together, even with incredibly tepid support at home, a pretty good international coalition to do military aid and humanitarian aid to Ukraine. Like he did that, the releasing of the intelligence.
He might a little bit more than us, but like he spends hours, days researching stuff, Tim. Like again, that's what I'm saying. Like he doesn't necessarily just take things at face value. Like he does like I've watched some of his streams where he's like extensively looking through papers and reading reading up on this stuff, not just looking at CNN articles.
Intelligence and everything to call that invasion coming ahead of time. He was able to restrain Bibi at least twice in very important ways, I think. And Bibi waited, whether it was towards the end of the war, it was letting all those people leave Rafah. It was like 1 million people. And then I think a month into the war, he was able to get a week ceasefire for humanitarian aid to come in. Those were really key big things.
Yeah,
I don't see the.
yeah,
I know there's like all the age jokes in the U.S., but like I don't know where I'm seeing like the rest of the world hated Biden or didn't respect Biden or anything. Like, I don't know if anybody was thinking those things, or if they were. I don't see how it came out in any measurable way.
Yeah, I don't think hated is the right word, but I do think so. The Ukraine Russia stuff, I think, is a little bit overstated. The international community needs the United States to impose any type of sanctions on a country like Russia because of the U.S. dollar. So the fact that Biden was somehow central in banding together all of these countries to go and put sanctions on Russia or something, I mean, they needed the United States in order to even effectively do it. So I don't know that was. Does that make sense? I don't know if that was him.
Well, but it could have been if it was Trump. I don't know if we would have done it.
You don't think the U.S. would have put sanctions on Russia?
No, I don't. I have no confidence in that. No, given the rest of Trump's like foreign policy, I don't know why I would even begin to think that. He abandoned the allies with the Kurdish people. He didn't do anything when Saudi Arabia was attacked by Iran for the first time. He didn't do anything to. He didn't do anything against Ukraine, Russia when he was in office, and Crimea had been occupied, and that Russia was sending more troops into the Donbass. Like, I don't see anything with Trump.
So again, there's like the one thing I would love for Destiny to do, if he ever, I would love for him to look into this treaty that Russia had, because when the Soviet Union broke up, part of it breaking up was essentially like, these countries that were formed out of the USSR were, given their statehood essentially, and then if their governments defaulted, it would revert back to Russia control. Crimea was one of those it was a part of Ukraine, but essentially was an independent state. And when the politicians up and left and the government defaulted, Russia was like, okay, well, we're taking our stuff back. And again, you can debate whether that's right or wrong, but according to this treaty, that's what happened. But instead, what happened was that, now we start fighting over this territory, which technically should be Russia. Now we're financing a war and saying that we can bomb them. And again, you're in a really, really sticky situation with this, and there's no one even touches on that. And even myself, I want to look more into that because it's all in black and white in there.
Standing strong with foreign allies ever, unless I missed something foreign policy wise that.
Yeah, you might be right. And so I think there was an escalation, though, and that escalation is what was the impetus for a lot of these new sanctions against Russia, though. During Biden's term.
Sure,
that makes sense. It started.
Mm-hmm.
It started back but your point still stands. Yeah, I think that there's certainly questions on the world stage about whether Trump is a good, representative, I guess, of the United States abroad. I think. Well, I don't think
I'm not aware of there's questions there. I think people, overwhelmingly are saying no, right? Like Europe is talking about abandoning a U.S.-led world order now after that Vance speech, and now for supporting Ukraine.
But what does that mean? Though?
It means that
like a U.S.-led world order, because the dollar's not going anywhere, and that the economics of it all is kind of what governs the world order.
The economics follow.
Thank you. What I just said, yes.
Follows the military supremacy, though, right?
Well, yeah, in a way, but it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing. The military supremacy can only come with the power of with the power of the currency, in which case the dollar's far and away. I just don't think you can separate it out.
Well, no, they talk about it a lot in the Federalist Papers. Having a strong enough Navy, military to ensure free trade, to ensure trade routes through waterways is incredibly important. Imagine the United States is the global reserve currency and we have the dollar and blah, 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 but we have no Navy, we have no military. And the Houthis go back to bombing ships that are trying to go up through the Suez Canal. Well, what do? Do you hope that Britain stops it, or France, or maybe China or India does? Like, the United States having a strong economy obviously helps do, dollar denominated trades. You were talking the petrodollar, or just having the US as being the world reserve currency. But if we didn't have the military to ensure that those dollars could reach every single market on the planet, it's hard to say if it would still enjoy that status. I agree that it's not like, Trump pulls back from the whole world stage and the US drops its reserve currency status in 5 years, probably not. But it definitely becomes more questionable. And I think the military part is an important part of that.
But do you think that there's any threat to the U.S. military at this point?
Yes,
like in other words,
domestically. Donald Trump.
well, maybe you're right, but like what I'm saying is, if the EU says, hey, we want to provide a threat, or we want there to be a threat to the United States as the head of the world order, I mean, what's the pathway to even do that, regardless of what you think of Trump?
Well, it would be questions about like, what does it look like when Europe has to deal with Russian security threats, right? Right now, they look to the United States to lead those conversations, and it has to do a lot with, how do we feel about sanctioning people or cutting off trade or energy, whatever. Maybe there's a world where Europe starts to make decisions where they say, okay, well, not only are we sanctioning Russia, since the U.S. is going to join us, we're sanctioning the United States as well. Now the U.S. suffers economically.
Yeah, they're totally within their rights to do so. Like, I mean, the EU has been pulling back from its trade and natural resources from Russia. They said we're not going to, we're not going to support Russia. They've made that choice. They could do the very same thing to us if they wanted to. I mean, they're perfectly capable.
Or maybe in a worst case world, there's a world where the EU starts to align more with Russia or China and India because the United States just isn't providing much anymore in terms of military.
I can't imagine why they would ever do that. Like, again, they just spent the last couple of years not getting resources from Russia or pulling back how much resources they're getting, natural gas. And now all of a sudden they're going to turn around and start like that it's not going to happen. Is what I'm getting at. Like, you can wish in one hand and crap in the other. Let's see which one fills first.
Military security or economic benefit.
But that's not going to happen in the near future. I mean, I don't see any pathway of that happening. Of the EU aligning more with like Russia or China.
But why haven't they in the past? It's because they've been aligned with the United States, right?
Who?
The
EU?
Western Europe, yeah.
But like just look at the conflicts of like that even NATO has caused in Eastern Europe. There's no pathway for the EU.
Apologize, guys. My internet's being the usual pain in the butt. Should be about good here. Hold on.
And what Russia's wanted, and now we're just going to push all that under the rug and align. It just doesn't seem probable.
I mean, it doesn't seem probable. I agree, but that's because it was never probable before that the United States would just unilaterally withdraw from the entire world stage. I don't think anybody ever considered that happening because it's stupid for.
They're not unilaterally withdrawing from the world stage either. Like, I think to say that's a bit foolhardy. Like, it's not. I mean, I think Trump doesn't want to be on the world stage as much as we generally are, and he's like tried to pull us out of many places. But like we're not just being like disappearing, gone.
A billion different reasons, right? But I mean,
yeah,
NATO doesn't exist
agree.
really absent the United States of America, right? I guess you have a nuclear umbrella still with like the United Kingdom and France. But I mean, like absent the United States, NATO looks significantly different, right?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, it's definitely not the same thing.
They're not going to pay for it.
I don't think we should be withdrawing from. I don't think we should withdraw from the World Health Organization. I don't think we should withdraw from NATO. I think all of these are important. I'm for globalization. I think it's essential in the world that we live in today.
But what is
wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. Yeah, I don't think it's.
Jay, feel free. You can inject your opinion anywhere you want. This is a free discussion. I'm just going over this conversation myself.
It's beyond the scope of imagination to see the EU, become closer to India or China, maybe not Russia, but at least India or China more so than the United States if the US decides that they want to abandon every single thing that we do internationally.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's possible. I don't think it's imminent, but it's certainly possible. But
yeah, exactly. Like, and this is the problem is like, it's possible, but it's not something that we have to worry about. Like soon, we're not abandoning the world stage. Like, again, like, I don't know. And this is one of the problems I think with some of the discourse nowadays is that it's like, it's this way or it's that way. It's like, no, like there's a lot to discuss here, and it it could happen maybe in 30 years. It's not going to happen within 4 or 5 within Trump's, administration. So like, let's, I don't know. It's what's kind of annoying about some of his debates.
I think people are probably overstating the damage that withdrawing from some of these international organizations will do in the short term.
Yeah.
So I think that Trump has 4 years, and I think there could be a lot of damage in those 4 years, but I think that it's going to swing back. And I don't think there's any world that exists in the next 4 years that would preclude the opportunity of the United States to step back on its pedestal, if you want to put it that way, after Trump's term.
Maybe, but I think but I don't think people want to deal with a country that is suffering, domestic schizophrenia, right? Like, to go from Obama to Trump was a swing, and then from Trump to Biden was a swing, and then from Biden to Trump was a huge swing, and then from Trump to another Democrat? Like, I don't think anybody's going to want to do anything with the United States. I know it's the separation hurts, which is why people have been putting it off for so long. But if they start to separate, and if they do start to build closer relations with India, with China, then you look at the United States and it's like, okay, that's cool that you guys have a new president, but let's see where you guys are at like 4 years from now, because why the fuck would you trust any of these things that's coming from the United States?
Yeah, but I think you have all those same questions for those other players. Like, why would you trust anything coming from China, who's struggling with their own economy right now? There's going to be
China
just
might be struggling,
but
they don't have the same, like, we're friends with these guys and now we totally changed our mind. China, the CCP enjoys relative stability politically when it comes to the relationships with other countries, right? I don't think China is fractured politically at all like that.
But even
we probably shouldn't model our economy after them, though, just because they enjoy relative stability with their allies. It's like, be careful where you tread here. Jay Vord is, thanks, Tom. Then I don't give a shit about Russia and Ukraine war, which is of ethnicities going back hundreds of years before we were born. Yeah, that's fair. Jugglins Regia says, I never understood politics. It's just weird to think that a group of people actually can think and make decisions. There's always a division somewhere, but that's just my opinion. No, I mean, the problem is there's too many cooks, too many chefs in the kitchen. And now that the politics has been so bifurcated, it's either you're on one side or you're the other, and you can't be like a rational thinker. You can't be someone who's like, well, I'm going to kind of wade in the middle, and I'll be liberal on some things and conservative on others. Like, then you're just a loser, a fence-sitting loser. So it's really hard. I agree. Though I do think that, wading in the middle somewhere is where most people are. Most people are conservative on some things and liberal on others. Not personally.
Their actions on the world stage are up to the level or far exceed the level of what Trump has done. Even the World Trade Organization said that, where you have the Chinese government that is subsidizing Chinese companies, and they're dropping, below priced products into foreign markets to take market share. And that practice has been routinely criticized by the World Trade Organization and others. And I just don't see how there would be any level of trust there too. I'm not even arguing pro what Trump has done. I'm just saying, like, I don't think the EU makes any step in a positive direction by establishing or aligning itself with any of those other countries.
Sure. And I agree that, like, China might engage in trade practices that people don't like, but all of that is just pales in comparison to the United States one day saying, we're going to do 25% tariffs on anything, like, eat shit. It's like, it pales in comparison, not even close to how the insane change in policy that is.
I don't know. I don't think it pales in comparison. I think it's of a different kind, but I think it's just as underhanded, in many ways, because the Chinese government won't admit, like, they'll do this stuff. It's all known that it's happening, and it's severely damaging, in many cases, artificially damaging foreign markets. And I don't see how that's necessarily any better than instituting some tariffs on countries.
Well, I mean, you're dramatically underselling that, instituting some tariffs. So what you just said was the important part, though. When you say it's happening and everybody sees it happening, you know what to get when you're working with China, right? They're probably subsidizing their goods. You know that if you start a company there, they have to partner with a Chinese one. They're probably still in your IP. It sucks. It's annoying. It's not cool. But you know what you get with China. But with the U.S., you don't know what you're getting. And that's the issue, is the lack of stability. Not necessarily good or bad, but just the stability. And a 25% tariff out of nowhere is earth-shattering.
earth
I mean,
shattering.
there's going to be tariffs, but you're right. The Mexico-Canada ones are terrible, and it's going to be bad for both countries.
Well, we've been speaking about doing it to the European Union as well soon, right? Aren't we talking about 25% tariffs on the EU too?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I think
so casual bringing it up. There's just like an insane 20, like out of nowhere, 25% tariffs. Like holy shit, these are like earth-shattering tariffs.
But tariffs, I 100% agree. That would be stupid, really damaging to anyone involved in that situation. But tariffs have become this kind of weird left-right issue, and they're not inherently bad. I mean, yeah, in an ideal world, we'd be in a situation where we didn't need a tariff, but that's not an ideal world. I mean, there's not free trade on the global stage, and you know that. Like, there's not a perfect entry and exit point for everybody's product, what they produce well, what they need to import. It's just.
I think we're having a huge disagreement of magnitude with the way we're speaking about these things. This is like the difference between like a couple that like playfully like pokes each other in the car, or like a guy or a girl who like licks their finger and puts in their ear or whatever, like annoying shit like that. And then one person one day, has like a pair of brass knuckles loaded up and they just whoosh, as hard as they could into the other person's face. And we're like, yeah, I mean, people kind of like poke each other.
And what's happening, Destiny, is that you're putting on the brass knuckles and Matt is giving you a wet willy. And you don't like that. And this is what I think about Destiny, is that he wants to put the brass knuckles on. I mean, you just watch his body language. He's sitting there. He's sitting there like fidgeting, like he needs to like really get deep into like he wants to get deep in the weeds with people. He wants to yell at them. His chat is probably bored. They're bored sitting there like, what is this guy? Why does he look so funny? Why is he? Oh, what is this idiot? Like they're probably egging him on to like, you know what I mean? And like, this isn't exactly what he's saying here, but like, Destiny is being very like, it's being way over the top and hyperbolic with everything he's saying. And like Matt's just trying to have like a legitimate, like, this is what I think about this. Like, I agree with, like, he's like sitting there agreeing with him, but like the degree of magnitude is like different. Like, he's just like, I just don't believe that this is happening at the rates that you're talking about, or as crazy as you're talking about. And that's fine. You don't need to. He's being hyperbolic. Like he's exaggerating the point, and like he means what he's saying, but he's like blowing it way out of proportion.
Know each other sometimes, and it happens. Like, no, we're on a totally different level. What is the aggregate estimate of tariffs, of tariff burden around the world is supposed to be like 3%, I think is the estimate. I don't know if I read that in a Krugman article yesterday, but like that's about the average. 25% tariffs. It's not like Trump came out and said, we don't like how Canadian lumber markets are subsidized. We're doing a 5% tariff on Canadian lumber. Or we don't like how this is subsidized in Europe. We're going to do a 10% or 7.5% tariff against European exports for cars. It's these blanket, broad market, 25% tariffs, and all the stated reasons are insanely ridiculous. Like,
I agree. I 100% agree with you. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I think that tariffs across the board are a bad idea. But my point is, there's going to be some. There's going to be some tariffs in a global economy. Like, I mean, did you agree with Biden's tariffs? In general, like, did you feel like they were reasonable?
No one gave a shit about him, and this is where, like, I don't know what he's going to say. Again, this is a blind reaction. No one cares about that because he just kept Trump's in there and he imposed higher tariffs elsewhere. But it's not a big deal because, again, the way in which Trump is using tariffs is a means of negotiation, which Destiny doesn't like. He thinks it's careless, which you might be right. But Trump, or someone like Biden, he's a nice guy, right? He's nice. He's an old man. He doesn't be mad. He has purpose. He's being nice about it. It's the difference. It's always been the difference.
I think that if you want to tariff, I believe his were focused on, I think it was EVs and microprocessors. Was it?
Like solar panels.
Maybe, yeah.
Like I said, yeah.
If you want to, if you want to do tariffs and your stated goal is national security reasons, then that's fine. At least you're honest about the tariffs, because we're understanding.
But is that honest though? Like,
yes, because you're going to take an economic hit, but you do it for national security reasons, as opposed to Trump, who's pretending that these tariffs are going to benefit us economically, which they're absolutely not.
No, I agree, and they're terrible revenue generating tools, as we saw in like the Great Depression, so and many other times. But here's
Vixel Twitch says it's so funny how they're against tariffs, but they defend high taxes. I will say there's not really many people defending high taxes. Well, it just depends on who you talk to. Like, so people are for something like universal health care, or free college. Like, that comes with a very high tax, like a high income tax, like, or a high property taxes too. Like, I mean, if you want something like that, you're going to be taxed to death, in which case you are defending higher taxes. Most people want lower taxes, but yeah. Garrett Grant, thanks so much for gifting that one Shagsworth membership. Appreciate you, man.
Here's the thing. I don't think it's just for national security reasons that tariffs are in place. That's where I'm pushing back. So I think that you do tariffs at other times, you institute tariffs at other times, for example, to protect domestic industry. I think that's well accepted. And you might do it for a short time to protect domestic industry. You probably can't do it across all industries. Oh, you definitely can't do it across all industries. But like the EV tariffs, you think that's security related?
If you gave that reason, but it's also possible. Like, I'm a hardcore capitalist and free markets guy, so I mean, there are probably tariffs that Biden did that I wouldn't agree with. That I'm just not. And I'm not trying to say you agree with. Sure, but I would say that a tariff targeted towards China on one market is still galaxies apart, multiverses apart from a 25% blanket tariff across our closest trading partners that we share our largest markets with.
Yeah, it is. You're right. I mean, I agree with you. I'm trying to come up with some reason. Hopefully there's a second act. I don't know. But I agree. I think it is different in kind, for sure.
What do you think Trump's goal is with the tariffs?
Well, if you would have asked me a month ago, I would have said, I think he's totally just throwing that number out there for better or for worse, by the way. I'm not saying it's a good thing. In hopes that he'll get, maybe there were some backdoor conversations, some phone conversations that he was trying to get Canada or Mexico to do something.
Well, we see that, both leaders have said, or at least Trudeau has said, they haven't spoke. So there are no unless he's lying about that. So it doesn't seem like there are any backdoor conversations. I mean,
but I'm saying that would be the most sympathetic kind of view of what those public demands were, if that makes sense, or the public threats were of the 25% tariffs. But as it's played out, yeah, I think it's a disaster that they went into effect today. And you can just hope that it's a short-term thing until Trump is satisfied or gets what he wants, or maybe it is a redo of that agreement.
Do you agree that it's not good to negotiate with our partners by basically being bullies? Or
I wouldn't go that far. I think that there's going to be some bullying on the world stage, even with partners. I think that
there's a magnitude question. You say some bullying. This is a historic level, insanely high, broad market tariff. This is not just about. This is like taking the sledgehammer to our economies. Why would this ever be a good way to deal with your closest friends?
I agree that it's not a good way to deal. I'm just saying that what you said is this a good way as far as bullying our partners to get what you want on the world stage? And I think sometimes you do have to, but not in this specific way. I don't agree with it.
Okay, and I didn't see any indication that we needed to here right now. Did you? I haven't heard any indication that Canada is unwilling to work with Trump on some deal, or that Mexico would be unwilling to work with Trump on some. I mean, again, we literally renegotiated NAFTA with both these people, and I don't remember there being. I don't know when Trump became obsessed with tariffs, but I don't remember the tariff threat on either. On that former renegotiation of NAFTA 5 years ago at all.
Don't you think he became obsessed with?
It's a fair point on Destiny's part to make that it does seem out of left field. I would be interested as well as to understand why the blanket tariff, 25% tariff on Mexico and Canada. Now, I think in terms of Mexico, it seems like he wanted help from Mexico on border security, so that makes sense, for fentanyl, illegal immigration, etc. So why Canada? Again, So I would be interested to know that.
With tariffs, when he realized it was like an attention grabber for him, so he started talking about tariffs, and then he thought, oh, I'm just going to raise the ante and talk about it more. Like, do you think that Trump actually believes that tariffs can replace the income tax?
I don't know. He might. The fact that he just did this right now.
I don't think Trump is that dumb, and I think, yeah, I don't believe he's that dumb. I think that Trump does a lot of things poorly. I think doing business is not one of them, and tariffs are a big part of business. Import, export. He's done it. He understands it. I don't believe for a second that he thinks that imposing tariffs on those goods are going to somehow replace income tax if he gets rid of it.
You really think he might believe that?
Trump comes off to me as a fucking moron, so it's possible he does think that. Yes,
right.
I have no idea.
That
could be the case.
I don't know. I mean, I'd like to think no. I mean, we've kind of tried that before. Like we've I would say most recently in the 1930s, early 30s, we went super tariff heavy, and we didn't probably even go tariffs across the board at that point, but that definitely exacerbated the Great Depression.
Sure.
It made it much worse. So yeah, I don't think he's going to try that, but we'll see, I guess. I mean, there's no world, I think, where he tries it fully. Do you?
I mean, we wouldn't have said that he would have tried these tariffs a few months ago, no?
Maybe. Well, here's a question. Do you think Elon knows what he's doing?
In regards to what?
In regards to the whole Doge thing.
No, I think Elon is entirely inept at almost everything I've seen him talk about or do. Unless,
if he's talking about in regards to Doge, maybe. But again, I just don't. You can disagree with Elon on how he acts in some things, but the man is brilliant. He's a genius. These kind of people, Trump and Elon, they don't do things for no reason. They don't just do it because they're winging it. These kind of people are calculating. They understand the world that they're in. So again, I think this is just Steven's personal bias getting in the way. Again, like there's plenty of people I disagree with in DC that I don't think are necessarily dumb, but they are, I don't know. Like Trump and Elon are they're very different individuals. Very, very different. Oh, yes. Brilliant in like intellect.
Unless there's some master plan behind the scenes and he just pretends to be retarded on every interview and every tweet that he does.
Yes, I think he is much like Trump in that he is attempting to put up this like meme facade. Like again, they're leaning into this like culture war like meme, and it's garnered favor. It's by a younger audience, and it's also made people laugh, connected them with the everyday person in some regard. So I think part of it is a show, and I think part of it is just him trying to be a normal human, even though like he is, autistic, for like, so.
I actually kind of do agree with you in the sense of he doesn't ever sound very smart when he's talking. He kind of bumbles through. Like for example, if he was on one of your streams or something, I think that would be a really weird dynamic, I guess.
Sure.
But my hope is that even if it's not exactly being done in a way that everyone agrees to, I do think that he's probably trying to make some good changes. I mean, wouldn't you agree that the bureaucracy's become a little bit too big in the executive branch?
I don't know. Has it? What does it mean when it's too big?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious. So like,
before Matt talks, I will give my point of view. I think there's way too many appointments that are made by the president. I think that the executive branch is like, especially the executive branch should be a contained power. And you have a lot of unelected people, and that's been rampant for a while, not just from Trump, but from, I think the issue that we're running into is that right now Trump is leaned so heavy into the drain the swamp thing that hiring people like, or bringing in people like Elon, who aren't necessarily traditionally qualified to be in their positions, is like it's like a eyesore. Like, it draws so much attention to that. But this has been happening for so long. These appointments in the executive branch have been going on forever. President comes in, he makes 100+ appointments, and those people appoint people. So it should be reined in a lot, I think.
For example, so the executive branch has over 2 million people in it
Okay.
now. So
if a country
none
of
of those are
330
elected.
million people, how big should it be? What's the ideal number for the federal government? Is it larger or smaller than other democracy federal governments?
Well, you have 2 million people who are unelected, who've been appointed to these positions by various people over time, right?
Should we be electing every single federal employee? Is that like the
No, of course not. But my point is that these executive branches, they're making laws that you and I have to follow.
Well, they don't make laws; they make rules based on laws passed by Congress, right?
Well, yeah, but in effect, they're making laws. So anything they do is published in the Code of Federal Regulations, right? And so these are allegedly within the power that's given to them by certain legislation, but in reality, they're dictating things that are impacting the day-to-day lives of Americans, probably much more than legislation is in many ways.
Well,
and so
but I mean,
don't you think?
But they have to by virtue of what they do, right? Like, how could you?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay. So
I think the point is that this can be contained to a much smaller group than 2 million. Like, 2 million people, even though there's 330 million people, give or take, in the United States. Like, the point is, as it pertains to Doge, is that you can do this with a much smaller amount of people. You don't need 2 million just public or political appointments. That's a lot.
we have to do that. And also, we would say now that they're not making their own rules. They're literally making rules in the only possible way you could ever make a rule from the Congress. There's only one way to do it now. It's not even up to their interpretation anymore, right?
No, it is. So are you talking about the reverse of the chevron?
Correct. Yeah. Loper means now that there's only one permissible way for statutory construction of any law passed by Congress. And if anybody disagrees, they can sue them, and the Supreme Court will tell you exactly what the law means. So the federal government is even less deference now when it comes to creating rules from laws.
No, I think you're misinterpreting that ruling a little bit. So you're right that Chevron deference.
Okay, I need 1 quick second to use the bathroom, and I'll be right back, folks. Give me 1 minute. All right, back. Sorry.
Deference was overturned, but it doesn't mean that there's only one possible way. So there's still going to be deference given to, all these different agencies, all these different departments.
Absolutely not. That was the whole point, was that statutory construction is existing solely in the domain of the judiciary, that there is absolutely no deference given, and there is only one permissible construction of a rule from a law.
If it's challenged, that's my point. So
sure. I mean, but that's true. That's like saying everything is legal unless it gets challenged by a court. I mean, right?
But practically that does make a big difference. So they have deference up to the point until it's challenged. So most rules within the CFR, Code of Federal Regulations, are still going to be deference of these agencies unless they are challenged. In which case, it's
when it comes to this, like this is where Matt shines, and like I want like like this is his area of expertise. And Destiny, while well read, like he is more of a philosopher here, and Matt is like the key authority on law. So
to be 99% of them are
Sure,
still
I
going
guess
to be
maybe, yeah.
deference. So
But I mean,
So,
like,
well-
but I mean, like, that's the only way the federal government can work, right? They have to make rules from laws in order to be able to do anything, right? Like, there's no other world where
Exactly.
yeah. Okay.
but there's a difference between saying that and like that's obviously the way it's going to work, and then saying like the size is still an issue, because so we engage in deficit spending, right? Both administration, all parties engage in deficit spending, which is going to come, it's going to be an issue over time. Tons of that deficit spending is this discretionary spending by these different federal agencies. And that has to be on the table if we're going to seriously consider cutting down the expenditure of our government.
So put it on
so
the table.
How else do you do it?
Well, Congress is the one that approves the budget. So you would go to Congress and you would start to cut some of these programs. You certainly wouldn't do it illegally by creating a faux office within the executive department and then having that go through.
It's not a faux office.
It kind of is, right?
So you don't think it was within Trump's power to create, because it wasn't really a new department. It was just a rebranding of the United States Digital Service.
I super disagree, and that's definitely not true. The Doge was
the executive orders. That's what it says.
I'm aware that the executive order says that, but the USDS's original mission was only to do digital upgrades to make services more efficient around the federal government. They absolutely were not.
Is that not what essentially Doge is doing? Like, I mean, you can split hairs all you want, but essentially they're attempting to, again, the wording might be different. You might not like what they're doing, but it is within his power to rebrand an agency. And he did so. And I think it's well within the bounds of what it was. Like, sorry to say.
Created to do waste, fraud, or abuse, and they absolutely weren't there to cut spending in ways that was contrary to the congressional statutes that authorized the creation of those departments. For instance, the USDS would have never had the authority to go in and hack all of USAID.
All right, I think I'm back. Sorry, there's a small little internet blip there.
Rebranding, the USDS is just becoming Doge, but there's a reason why 20 of the USDS people just fucking quit as soon as the merger happened. Like, you agree?
Yeah.
Right? The Doge's mission is way different than what the USDS mission. It's not a stretch. It's totally different. It's not at all in the same purview of what they were doing, right?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on how you package it, I think. But
hold on. USDS's mission was literally, if you do too much shit by paperwork or whatever, we're going to help you convert it to Excel or email or whatever. That was USDS's mission.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. But that's a mission grounded in what? Making things more efficient in the government, which is if you follow Elon and what he talks about on Twitter, which you're at your own peril, obviously, but he'll talk about like that's kind of one of Doge's main features, right? Is they're going in trying to make things more efficient. And yeah, you can argue about the cutting, fraud, waste, and abuse part of it. Now, it's related to efficiency in a way.
No, it's not. Definitely... Wait, why are you saying that? That's not true.
Because as something becomes more efficient, how do you make something more efficient? Is often by cutting waste, cutting abuse in many cases.
Yeah, again, it's exactly what happens. One of the first things that you can do to like you making things more efficient. Like a lot of times that means there's too many people doing something, right? Efficiency often means that you need to cut costs in order to bring everything in line with your budget. And one of the things that Elon talked about was how there was certain areas of the government that could just like essentially write blank checks and not say where they were writing them to. And it's like, he's like, wait, what? Like, no. And like some of these things were just in place and people probably just forgot about them. And that's being charitable, probably. So, like, yeah, like this is all a part of government efficiency. Sometimes you have 2, 3, 4, 5 people doing the same thing that don't need to be. And it could have just been, it doesn't even necessarily need to be nefarious. And again, maybe it's me just being too charitable, but like, it's not always nefarious if too many people are doing the same exact job, especially within government. There's a lot of people out there. Question is, do we need that many people doing it? There's a lot of wasteful spending out there. What is it being spent on? And we're getting lists of things that not a lot of people agree with. USAID doing all of this work around the world that has nothing to do with the actual aid part.
It's the U.S. Digital Service, USDS.
Right.
Imagine if I were to say, here's a way to make every car in the entire.
And remember, Matt's not disagreeing that it's a stretch, that it's the same thing. Like Matt said, yeah, it's a stretch that it's the same, but like, you know, it's making things more efficient. And sure, the USDS did something a little bit different, but that's just like how it goes. It was still rebranded. It was efficiency in one way. Now we're doing efficiency in another way.
How are United States more efficient? Kill your family because now you have less bodies in the car and now your gas mileage is going to be better. That's not, I mean, is it making it more efficient? I mean, kind of, but not really. It's obviously that's way outside the scope of what the USDS was originally defined as.
Yeah, it's far-fetched and it's going to be challenged. And yeah, it's definitely a stretch of what the USDS was. I'm just saying, like, there's a
it's not even, it's illegal. It's illegal, right? Doge cannot, even the president cannot cut away US aid, right? He can't do it. Okay.
I agree. Right. I agree with that. The USAID things, I agree. That's a thing. But so going back to my main point though, don't you think, like, how do you do that thing? Because you know and I know that, but I mean, yes, kind of.
No, exactly. Like, but the problem is that's hard. And now we have to actually take a real look at programs. We got to decide, what do we want to cut?
Yeah, the problem is, so here's what's going to have to happen. And I would think that Destiny's smart enough to realize this, but it doesn't serve his ends. The point of Doge is to find all these things. And then it is up to Congress to make the proper changes. Like Congress needs to put their foot down and essentially say, this needs to stop. You can't, this whole thing over here. No. USAID, if there's going to be USAID, there needs to be like a real ledger. We need to know whatever it is. This department over here, you can't just write a bunch of blank checks. We need the full amount and we need a description of what that is. You want to send money somewhere? You want to give money to someone? It needs to say what it's for. You can't just write a check for whatever amount and then send that thing, person, entity, company, corporation money. Like, and then it needs to be codified in law. And then if there is something nefarious happening, the DOJ needs to get involved. Like, I don't think anyone's insinuating that Doge is going to be judge, jury, executioner on this, you know, and Matt even said, like, I disagree with, you know, axing USAID. Like, you absolutely have to go through the right channels. And he's like, that's a different thing. Whatever. But like, I don't think anyone's arguing to go past checks and balances. I wouldn't be.
And Trump is not an effective leader, and the Republicans in Congress don't know how to govern. So it's easier to just have Elon Musk run through and just take a hatchet to everything, so you don't have to actually make hard decisions about what we should be funding. But that's, yeah, if the funds are appropriated through Congress, if these departments are created through Congress, then you have to defund them through Congress. But that's governance. It's hard. There's a reason why we have lawmakers that specialize in making laws and doing legislation. It's not meant to be ran through with one, 105 IQ dipshit who's addicted to ketamine, and to have him like take a hatchet to every part of the government he doesn't like because this is DEI or Reuters in the contract.
I mean, I probably disagree a little bit with your characterization of Musk. I think that he's certainly not going through and doing all this on his own. He is, like you said, probably making things up as he goes, and he's doing all these things. You can argue with the different techniques and everything, but I mean,
well, like, do you agree, for instance, that he's engaged in like blatant lies, like the Social Security dead person thing? Like, these are just blatant lies that he's engaged in.
Right.
So
Yeah,
how much credibility?
yeah.
So if we see that he's got the legality is questioned, there are multiple TROs now that the government is defying that's been issued against them, right? We see, so the legality is questionable at best, okay? And that's in the best interpretation. We see that he's intentionally lied about things. All the new information that he's given us are already available on government websites, and they haven't shown proof of any waste, fraud, or abuse yet. Why would I trust this person anymore? Like that, like if it was a Democrat, we'd just be done, right? We say, okay, well, fuck that. Obviously, they're not trustworthy. Why would you even give him another chance?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's going to be for Trump to decide. But see, here's the thing, though. Do you think that he's like, you seem to think he's just a total disaster and that he's had no impact whatsoever on anything good with the government, and even question his impact in his personal life and his businesses? I mean, do you think he's just a complete fraud?
When you say fraud, like in terms of Doge or in terms of his whole life or whatever?
Just everything. It really his whole life. Like, because there's that whole line of reasoning where he started out with his dad's money and he just bought companies that other people had already built, and then he went through, and now this is just essentially his work in the government is just an extension of that.
I mean, I like Tesla moved electronic cars forward a lot, or electric vehicles forward quite a bit. I feel. I think SpaceX has done really cool stuff with rockets and Starlink and everything else. Now, how much of that was because Elon is a genius versus he was just a really tough owner who was able to push his employees a lot?
105 IQ.
Well, I mean, when I hear him talk now, and I've challenged anybody, I think I even tweeted this out earlier. Show me anything of him speaking in the last 2 or 3 years that he doesn't just sound like a bubbling dipshit, because he sounds like an idiot now when he speaks about anything. He sounds like every incompetent middle manager, bureaucratic dipshit that anybody's ever had to deal with in an office environment ever.
Yeah. I mean, I can't necessarily disagree with that. Like Elon's become a person that I don't necessarily want to hear talk. And that's one of my big issues is like, there's certain people I just want them to like operate and do their thing. And Elon's become that person. Do SpaceX, Starlink, Tesla, like do your shit. Like, but again, in my opinion, I look at the man and I think you're obviously really smart. You know how to run companies. You know how to push them to the limit. You know how to, do better than NASA with a lot of with this rocket science. Like maybe you should stick there. But I don't know. But I know this is something that's helped him resonate with people. In the long run, is that he's been he's sort of talked to the people like a person. So maybe it's an act, but it's kind of hard to listen to a lot of times.
Right? Who likes the guy who says, give me an email and send me 5 things you did this week? The fuck? This is like the most bureaucratic waste of time ever. And you keep talking about unelected officials. He's also unelected. Like what?
Yeah, but I think that's a stupid argument against Musk in his current position, though, because people say, oh, he's an unelected official, so is the entire executive branch. That's neither here nor there.
Right. I mean, people need to stop saying he's unelected because as Matt said, most of the executive branch is just appointees. They're not elected. And this isn't new to Trump. It's not new to him. He didn't come up with this. So everyone should just stop. This has been happening for a very long time. So, and whether it's right or wrong is a completely different conversation that people can have. Totally different conversation. And I believe that we should scale down, scale it back. Executive branch has gotten too big. There shouldn't be that many appointees.
No, I don't think it's the same, because the entire executive branch, when you look at all the cabinet members, they at least require confirmation by the Senate in order to get through. Elon Musk didn't require any confirmation by the Senate because he's not in a real department, right?
Yeah, but the cabinet's the cabinet, right? So the cabinet, what is there, 15, 16 cabinet members now? Mm-hmm. And the rest of the executive branch is unelected, and most don't require confirmation by anybody.
Sure,
so
but the rest of the executive branch doesn't have individual members that are running through and changing every single other department. But Elon Musk seems to be the strongest cabinet member, and he has he spoke more than any other cabinet member 20 times over in the cabinet member meeting, and Elon Musk isn't even a confirmed real member of the cabinet. The administrator that they named for Doge was some lady, I don't even remember, Ceason or something, or Gleason. They named somebody who's not even Musk, so it's like, but
yeah. So, what are your issues with the current state of the left? So, you have obviously a lot of concerns with where the right's going and their allegiance to Trump and maybe Elon. Do you feel like the political left, and I'm not saying you agree with everything they're doing, but do you feel like it's in a good spot?
I feel like the center left, I think that they've done a good job legislatively in terms of governance. They just need to work on their messaging more. For some reason, all of our far left media hates our candidates, whereas all of the MAGA media is like sycophantically in line with every single talking point, from Joe Rogan to Tim Pool to Charlie Kirk to Donald Trump to Vance to the AFD to every conservative around the world gets like all of their thought things like beamed in from Starlink.
I do think it's a little I mean, you might be able to call me a Joe Rogan simp at this point, but I do think that Rogan it definitely takes a more middle of the road approach. I would say like the Turning Point people, Daily Wire, like you might be able to say that they take a more sycophantic approach. I don't think I would disagree there. Again, this comes down to my issue with political and cultural messaging across the board and how like it's just about like culture war level commentary and not about like what's actually happening, because we have to like affirm our biases like through some tribalistic means, and that is like it's growing very irritating to me. Like most people just don't operate that way. They just want to know like what's going on, and people want to feel like part of the tribe and all, but like at this point, like what's actually happening again, because you have to find like niche people that to explain this, and it's no longer like it almost is like the mainstream media, quote unquote, it doesn't feel that it's their job anymore to actually educate you on it. It's just, oh no, tune into this station if you want conservative news, and then turn into this station if you want like liberal news, or I'm sorry, if you want conservative and liberal opinions. Like that's more of like op-eds is what we're getting.
Link or something. And then on the left, all of your far left platforms, it feels like your far left platforms just fucking hate the candidates. Like I feel like a loser, or I felt like a loser talking about wanting to vote for Kamala or Biden when I was going on left-leaning shows. It just like whether it's Breaking Points or whether it's like Sam Seder, the Majority Report, or whether it's like just all of these like far left shows online. You know, your Hassan Pikers, your far left people on Twitch. Yeah, I don't know. Just it felt like the center left people just didn't have the same type of cultural penetration. Although hopefully they'll get more popular, I guess. Yeah.
Who's the candidate for that?
Candidate right now, I'm not sure. We need somebody who can command attention like Trump does.
No, I mean like the candidate to penetrate the culture a little bit more, like a Rogan, because that's been batted around a lot right now. Like the left needs their own Rogan, or the left needs their own whoever. Is it Destiny?
Probably not. I think I'm too extreme in a lot of ways, and I'm not a big fan of governing. I just like screaming at people. But just
see, I told you. He like this is boring to him. He wants to yell at Matt. He wants Matt to start yelling back at him. This is boring to him. You know, he right now this is just him doing the guy a favor, which kind of sucks. But he's right. He is not the guy for it. He's not the dude. And this is why I think like Rogan's not someone to toe the Republican line. Like he might be on that side more than most people, but like he's not. Like he is more in the phase of like I'll still believe in something that's more progressive if it makes sense to me, but like I'm not just going to blindly follow left or right politics at this point. I don't know. I guess you could make the argument that it's profitable to be conservative right now, but like I don't know how true that really is, quite honestly.
The center left just needs to get, I think, like a more positive message about America. I feel like there are some issues that they need to drop, like guns and fucking shitting on lobbyists and billionaires all the time. Feels like not the most popular messaging, but it needs to be somebody who can command a lot of attention. Like an AOC type figure would be able to do it. Somebody who can just be on social media a ton is really, really, really important.
Yeah, I don't disagree with this sentiment either. You need someone less insufferable than AOC, that is like who's intelligent, who can command a presence, like you said, but also be like somewhat rational. Like you need someone who I like actually appreciate is like Bill Maher. Like Bill Maher is still a lefty, but like he's willing to hear and like say things that people are not willing to say. And like again, you don't have to like Bill, and you could be against his stances in the past, but he's definitely been way more like level-headed in the past couple of years, because he realizes how just like how crazy the left and the progressive left has gone, and even just like liberals in general. So you need someone like, I don't think Bill would command that, but but you need someone like that who's willing to call out the bullshit really well. Bill Maher will flip flop. So here's something I want to bring up. I'm going to put this on screen so people can see. The idea of flip flopping it's become a pejorative, when I think people need to understand that flip flopping on something isn't necessarily inherently bad, as long as and I think there's a degree at which it becomes bad, but like believing something or knowing something and then gathering more information later and switching your stance based on more information isn't inherently bad if it's done for like properly and for the right reasons. We all live different lives, and we all like, things are important or not important. We all come to conclusions for different reasons, but flip-flopping, I think, is a term that we need to be careful of, because it basically means, if you're using flip-flop as a pejorative, you're basically saying you're locked into this idea, and if you change your mind, we're going to shame you for it. When I think that's retarded, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I mean, the billionaire thing I think is a major problem for the left, because everything is just like
100%.
Tax billionaires more, or tax millionaires more. We saw this with the Social Security stuff
They'll
recently.
have no idea how
And
taxes
it
work.
doesn't even make sense, because something like Social Security is only applied to income, and none of these billionaires make income. So raising like the cap on Social Security wouldn't even matter for billionaires, that is. So it's like the same default talking points every single time.
Yeah.
And it's become very like moralistic. So you're either I don't know how to explain it, but it's almost like the left has taken like the right's moralistic stance and adapted it to their own 2 or 3 pet causes, and then that's where the conversation occurs on the left. And most of the country now turns a lot of that off.
Maybe.
Like,
well, I mean, but the right.
I'm not saying you.
Things too, sure.
Well, of course, and it's probably just the culture wars that we were talking about, the back and forth of the culture wars. But I think very little of the left's dialogue, like on TikTok, which is where I'm on a lot, goes anything beyond billionaires bad, supporting marginalized groups, and probably Trump bad. So like those 3 items dictate 95% of what's talked about.
Yeah, sure.
From most of these creators. I mean, wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, probably. I think all the political conversations are really bad right now, but they're just as bad on the right, or maybe worse, because they're blatantly talking about doing illegal things and defending them and everything. So,
yeah. So, what do you think is the biggest existential threat to American existence right now?
Well,
you can't say Trump.
When I look at parallels to the Nazis, because that's what we always like to look at parallels for, I feel like the biggest issue we have right now is we don't have any strong defenders of liberal democracy in the United States. And I think when the country gets it doesn't feel like we have not large defenders of liberal democracy. You can argue that the Democratic Party is, but the progressive media doesn't, and nobody on the right, who's part of MAGA, does. Nobody on the right now, I would say, does at all. So if you start to get into a minority position where fewer and fewer people are willing to defend the concept of liberal democracy, then both sides are just going to continue to explode out as much as they can the executive powers and whatever else they can take from people, and then we're just going to descend into some chaotic, whatever comes from that, I guess. I don't know, civil war or some crazy government or some whatever.
You think that's actually a possibility?
Yes, I think it is.
An actual, like a civil war type event?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, nobody in 1900 thought that World War I was going to be on the way. I don't think anybody in 1920 thought that Germany was going to, take over 90% of Europe or whatever. Like, I mean, it seems hard to see these things until they happen.
Yeah, we're in a much different place in the world right now. I keep hearing this, and I just, yeah, to some degree, he might be right, but like, we have the gift of hindsight with these wars. Like, is there a chance for civil war? I mean, I guess there's always a chance for anything. Is there a chance for World War III? Yeah, there's always a chance for everything. The problem now is like we're in a place, I think, where like it's always like nuclear war is always the talk, right? Whatever war is fought, quite honestly, is not going to be a ground war. Um, I think if we're in anything, I think if it is anything, it will be what we're experiencing now to a higher degree. It's going to be, if it's a civil war, it's going to be something that is like sort of fought in the shadows and done through propaganda at a higher rate. I don't think there's necessarily be bloodshed on like an intentional level. Obviously, it's not going to be us standing in a field across from each other with muskets and bayonets. And I don't know if the world stage could handle another world war, because I think it would result in some sort of nuclear strike, which is going to, it's like you're talking end of humanity levels of like loss likely. The Earth will survive just fine, but humans likely not. But yeah, I just don't see it happening that way.
But I mean, right now we're having so many Democratic backslides, and the open disdain that I feel the right has for this country, and for any kind of like democratic order, and the open championing of weaponizing parts of the government to go after people all the way up to the lawmaker level is very scary to me. Like that Eric Adams stuff is just fucking insane to me. The the January 6th pardons were insane to me, but nobody on the right even cares.
Do you think that the comparisons that some on the left have of Trump and that certain German dictator, I don't know if you say his name on here, do you think those are overblown?
I mean, it depends on how they use them. The problem is when people like talk about Hitler, people always talk about the guy who's killing people in concentration camps, but that wasn't the thing that Hitler did the first day in office. So I'm not really as concerned with.
Yeah, but okay. And again, to your point, Destiny, this isn't his first day in office. He spent 4 years in office and didn't even come close to what people insinuate on. Like they talk, people, liberals or progressives talk about it all the time about how this is Hitler. Like even if he's playing the slow game, like it doesn't even make sense at this point. So, like, I don't know, man. It's still a stretch. That part of it is a big stretch. And both sides of the political aisle are weaponizing the justice system against their political opponents, and it's disgusting.
Hitler, I think that when you hit your really bad points in history, it's more important to look at the things that led up to those points that created the conditions for those people to take over, and that's definitely been created. And that I think we have that environment now in the United States. So could Trump be a Hitler type person? Maybe Vance will be that person, maybe, but the environment's been created for it. Nobody seems to be fighting against it.
You think Vance could actually be that person?
No.
Sure. I mean, he said he would have assisted in overthrowing the election on January 20th, in 2020, so, or in 2021, I guess.
Yeah, but that's a big gap between that and then saying that he's
yeah.
I don't think so. Well, I mean, Hitler gained all of his power, a lot of it through the Enabling Act.
Destiny at this point is so fucking checked out. He's playing cookie clicker. Like you can hear his mouse going fucking insane. He's so bored of this, which is, it's kind of sad because Matt's like totally in good faith and like having a good conversation. He could just all he wants to do, like I said, is put on his brass knuckles and like go toe to toe.
Right? These are just harmless acts passed in the parliament or in the Congress that gives more and more power to the executive. Like it always seems like inconsequential until it isn't, and then things fall into place retrospectively, and like, oh fuck, maybe that was really bad,
Yeah, you never know the consequences of the actions as you're like living through them. It's always in retrospect that you kind of see that. That is true, very true. So, who's the best person that you've debated with, as far as not like morally who's the best person, but when you've had those conversations with people either on the left or the right, who do you have the most respect for as someone like a purveyor of ideas in those debates?
I don't know. The politics conversations online are trash, so probably nobody. They're all horrible.
It's a non-answer if I've ever heard it.
Yeah, they're pretty bad. Yep.
What about the ones that you've had though?
They're really bad.
It's still bad.
People don't have any. Yeah, I would say I feel like.
I mean, you've talked with a lot of the heavy hitters. You've talked with, I'm not saying heavy hitters intellectually, but like some of the big names. You've had a debate with Ben Shapiro. Didn't you?
Ben
have one with
Shapiro
him
was a horrible conversation. I mean, Ben Shapiro was horrible. This whole idea of like Donald Trump was a dictator, but it's okay because the guardrails will hold is just a fantastically insane argument to me. And you would never make the same argument for another person ever. It's like giving your daughter a gun because you know that the guy that she's dating is a rapist, but at least she has a way to defend herself. Like, it's just an unbelievably crazy statement, unhinged statement to me. And now, like when I'm trying to explain things to my audience, usually what I'll do is, like we were just talking about, like what's wrong with tariffs. I can just play Ben Shapiro videos from 6 years ago before he became a Trump sycophant, and I could show, oh, well, this is why these things are bad. But now he'll defend every single action that Trump does. So I have no respect for Ben Shapiro, probably less for him than anybody else because he knows better. The Jordan Peterson argument was insane. This guy doesn't know anything about any of the shit that he talks about, whether it's global warming or whether it's VAERS and vaccines or anything else. Like Candace Owens is in.
That's not all he talks about. Again, like it's another like small bet. Like he can't help himself but think but to badmouth his opponents. Like Jordan Peterson knows a lot about like psychology. That's his bread and butter. That's what he does. Like his opinions on VAERS and vaccines and stuff, like, okay, like sure. It doesn't mean he's not well read on it. Like again, like so Destiny, like use your logic and flip it on yourself. Like who are you? Right? Like you're obviously good at something, you're well read on something. So why can't someone else like be well read on it? Like it blows my mind that like he doesn't even hold him, like he doesn't understand like what he's even saying in the moment. And I get he doesn't like these people. They're you could say and agree that Daily Wire and Turning Point, like they're all sycophants for Trump. Like yes, you could make that argument, but to say that nothing that they have said is like or to insinuate here that nothing of what they said was of value and they were bad debaters, or like that's insane. That's total insanity.
Insane. I don't know. I mean, I don't know where these good conversations are, and I don't think I have any of them. I think it's just insane caricatures of opinions and positions online.
This to me just is another signal that Destiny is bored and he's trying to get out of this. And like Matt is trying desperately to hold on and have a more at length discussion.
And now it's all rhetoric and slogans and TikTok shorts.
Yeah, no, you're probably right. Have you talked with Tim Pool directly?
He won't talk to me anymore now that I've made it clear that I'm not going to play ball with stupid talking points anymore. But like I've had conversations with Tim Pool, but he's one of the worst. I don't know if he still secretly takes Russian money or if he's just like a horrible, treasonous anti-American all on his own. But he probably does some of the worst engagement with stuff ever I've seen in my entire life. I don't know if you saw him.
Do you think that there's... Oh, go ahead.
Like him with Luke Beasley, screaming at Luke Beasley, not knowing any of the details of the January 6th stuff.
Yeah.
And then him afterwards trying to Google what was going on. He's reading a Wikipedia page. He doesn't even know how to look up an indictment. And then the misquoting that he does of the Ahmaud Arbery case, the misciting he does of the George Floyd case. He's just one of the dumbest, worst people in the universe. But
you hear that a lot, the Russian money. Do you think there's actual creators out there taking Russian money to push
Tim Pool did take
points?
$5 million of Russian money. That's proved. We know
like
that
for sure. Actually, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, it was a tenant money thing. It was routed through another business. He got $5 million for some shitty random show that he syndicated.
Okay, my net is just a pain. Am I back? Can y'all hear me? Can you see me? Okay. Did I think he took Russian money? Yeah. I think Destiny's right. The to what degree is like he a Russian asset though? I don't know. I don't really care to know. I haven't really listened to Tim, because Tim for me fell into the same like bucket as a lot of like culture war creators now. Like they just keep saying the same thing, and I'm like kind of sick of hearing it. Um, okay. Yeah, I still use it. All right, let's keep going.
Maybe.
Just kidding. Sounds pretty lucrative.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's cool. Well, I appreciate you being able to have me on for a little bit.
Yeah. Anything else you disagree with, or?
I mean, I think we agree on a good bit of stuff. Oh, wanted to hear your yeah. So I don't know where you said this, but you talked a little bit about in the past how people like Rush Limbaugh and people like Michael Savage were kind of interesting for the right, because even if you disagreed with most of where they ended up, they had some pretty deep ideological anchor points, and you could have kind of a policy discussion with people like that. I thought that was an interesting point. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Or just that, like, when you watched the media back in the day, these guys were like your thought leaders, and they fleshed things out a lot more. Like, if I'm listening to Rush Limbaugh for 3 hours, it's not going to be for him to just repeat tweets, basically. But if I listen now to like Charlie Kirk or Tim Pool or people that go on Joe Rogan, I'm getting the exact same information that I would get from my mom or from a random MAGA conservative.
Is your mom a random MAGA conservative?
My mom's a hardcore MAGA conservative, yes.
Not necessarily. So it just depends on what, again, like, yeah, sometimes like there are certain guests that like Rogan has on that like they will do that. But there's quite a few guests that he has that actually talk about things that are not that, you know, I like listening to his episodes that are about like the ancient world, space, like conspiracy, like that stuff. Like that stuff interests me almost a hell of a lot more than the political shit.
My mom had that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do you have like good relationships with them still?
They're okay, yeah.
That's good.
This is hard to watch, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I could see that. I've not listened a ton to either Rush or Michael Savage in the past, but I've listened enough to know and hear what they have to say. Michael Savage is still going, I think, right?
Probably, yeah.
He kind of descended into some crazy stuff, I think, over time. But
I mean, every Republican is, I feel. I mean, listening even to Ron Paul, like supporting all the crazy Trump shit is like, Jesus. Well, I used to be a big Ron Paul fan in like 2008 when I was my libertarian phase in college. So,
yeah.
Do you think?
What did you think of? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to ask: is there anything that are you at a point now where you think that either not voting, like abstaining from voting, or voting for Kamala would have been better than voting for Trump?
6 weeks in.
It's what?
6 weeks in, or whatever it's been. Yeah, it's March 4th, so whatever that is. I hated Kamala as a candidate. I don't think she was a good candidate at all. I don't think she articulated things well, and I don't think she would have been an effective leader for the country. I don't think she had shown anything in her political career that indicated that there should be any confidence in her. I think that the one thing that you had going, maybe not the one thing, but the biggest thing that you had going for Trump over Kamala, just head to head, and again, I'm just talking head to head here, was that you knew what 4 years of Trump kind of looked like. And I think that even if you were 10% supportive of that, I just felt like you didn't know what you were getting with Kamala at all.
What do you think is one thing that she would be doing worse on now than Trump?
Oh, that's a good question.
I honestly, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that because I think that Kamala had some discussion on the policy side, but she threw out some crazy ideas as well. I think that there were some things that she had she had, well, I guess that wasn't that crazy. So I know a lot of people point to the unrealized capital gains, but that was just for like over $100 million net worth or whatever it was. So that wasn't too crazy. But I just think that the way that she kind of completely bowed to what I would consider to be the woke agenda, and I hate that term, but just that anyone who, I'm trying to think how to explain this, like anyone who brought up any of that stuff, she would essentially give the mic to as if they had all of the moral authority in the world. And I think that was a dangerous place for the country to go.
Sure, but from a policy perspective, like, what do you think is one thing that would have resulted from that?
That plays it, yeah, I was just gonna say that plays itself out in policy. I think you saw that. You see what's happened with like affirmative action programs over the years. You've seen and that's essentially,
sure, but affirmative action wasn't affirmative action ended by the Supreme Court under Biden?
Yeah, right. So it was essentially ended under Biden, but like there's a lot of ways to get around that policy.
But he didn't, right?
Is easy. Well, I'm not saying Biden. I'm just saying, like, if that's supported from the White House, there's going to be kind of a wink, wink. Like a lot of colleges will do what they want here. All you have to do is not have a written policy for that. You can continue to do business as normal. See, like that's really hard to prove. I'm shocked that case at Harvard or whatever it was, even ended up going all the way to the Supreme Court. I think that's difficult. I'm not shocked that an affirmative action case went to the Supreme Court. I'm shocked that all of that information came out as it did.
Okay, this is where my brain is like broken, and I don't know if like where the reality is separated from. When I look at Trump, I can think of probably off the top of my head like 10 over the line things that I think are just absolutely insanely horrible that have happened in just like the past 6 weeks. But then when I try to think of like, okay, well, what would have happened under Kamala or Biden that would have been so horrible if it was another 4 years of that?
So here I'll let him finish, but the difference is you're going from one extreme to the other. If you went from Biden to Kamala, you're not going to that extreme. It's like the tides are the same, but we went from like a tidal wave from one direction hitting a tidal wave in the other direction with Trump, like from Biden to Trump. And that is why you, like, in my opinion, that's why you would likely not see such insanity from Kamala, is because you're going from Dem to Dem, not from, you're going from extreme Dem to extreme Dem. If Kamala wins the election, but instead you're going from extreme Dem to extreme Republican. So yeah, you're going to see, especially nowadays, we're in this like crazy culture war, bifurcated, tribalistic political climate, and like it's just that so they're going to clash. No one's carrying over anything. They undid everything he did in his, in the first transition of power. So why, of course the same thing's going to happen, just because it's to the other side.
I always get these things of like the woke agenda or something, and it's like, okay, well, would I rather have a few more woke people in the U.S. or would I rather have 25% tariffs, unilateral surrender of Ukraine, departure of the United States from the world order? I mean, like January 6th, people all having all their charges dismissed, the dismantling of federal agencies in a way that contravenes law. I mean, like an executive order to rescind birthright citizenship. Like I have all these things on the table, and then on the other end, it's like, well, there were some woke people, and it's like,
yeah, but do you think that? Yeah, okay, but like some of that was overstated. Like what you just said.
Overstated? Wait, what did I just say that was overstated?
Like where for example, you were like, I forget exactly how you phrased it, but you said the unilateral surrender of Ukraine. And that's certainly
that is what he's trying to do, though, right?
I mean, I don't know. Like, it's not my area of expertise, but I don't think Trump is saying like Ukraine surrender and then Russia will get everything that they want. And that's what I hear you saying when you say unilateral surrender.
Because that's what's on the table right now. It's going to be Ukraine surrendering all the territory that Russia currently occupies. And then it's going to be probably a guarantee that Ukraine's not allowed into NATO for 100 years or whatever. And then it's going to be the sanctions are lifted off Russia and Russia.
Well,
they weren't allowed into. So NATO has pushed itself. So there was an agreement after they broke up the USSR that basically said that these countries bordering Russia aren't gonna join NATO. And slowly over the years, they got farther and farther, and more countries joined NATO along that border. And again, there's the treaty that says if the country defaults, if their government defaults, the territory reverts back to Russia. Crimea was one of those. It was technically its own free state, independent of Ukraine. Ukraine didn't see it that way. And this is what happened. But instead, Russia was like, no, we're taking it back because we can. Yeah.
I mean, the United States kind of already did agree to that, like back in the 90s. But Ukraine wouldn't be. And
Ukraine's not supposed to be in NATO.
Because like when Germany, and I'm not arguing for Russia here whatsoever, but I'm just saying like promises are not really, like, they don't really mean anything, right? So what and this is again not my area of expertise, so I want to clarify that. I'm just, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, truly. I thought that when Germany was merged together, right? The idea was that NATO would not take any countries east of that.
Yes.
Essentially, like no countries east of that would be like that NATO wouldn't try to get any more.
Yeah, we don't have to jump into
and the United States.
Yeah, we don't have to jump into all that.
I don't want to jump into that.
Yeah, but I'm just going to say that Germany was reunified in 1990. There were no Eastern countries for NATO to take. The not 1 inch eastward quote from Baker had to do with militarizing East Germany.
I'd have to look it up another time and go over it, but there is an agreement that the countries east of Germany or east of Germany, or it had something to do with it was more to do with the USSR breaking up in those countries.
If it was reunified. I know that what I'm saying is completely out of sync with what everybody else on the right argues with this, but like you can go and read these conversations from Baker. You can go and look at the world map where the Warsaw Pact was, where the Soviet Union was, and where NATO was. There was no place eastward for NATO to move. That had nothing to do with that. And Gorbachev himself was giving an interview saying that.
But eventually there was. But yeah.
Well, but eventually nobody knew the Soviet Union was going to collapse, right?
Yeah, but
I'm just saying that right now, like for instance, in the Doha agreement with Afghanistan, the United States completely surrendered Afghanistan under Trump to the Taliban. Afghanistan government wasn't even involved in those negotiations. So I don't know. And looking at Ukraine now, it doesn't seem like Ukraine is getting anything from Russia. I haven't heard a single thing discussed, and Trump seems petrified to criticize Putin on anything. So do you think there's a world where, like, what do you think realistically, if you had to bet money, I won't make a bet, but if you had to bet money, like, what would you guess that Ukraine is going to get from the United States forcing them to surrender here?
I don't know. I truly don't. I don't know. But like, so back to your question though, related to what worse things could Kamala do than what Trump has already done. And I agree with you. A lot of what Trump's done, I've not been a fan of, nor was I a fan before he ran for president a second time. But here's what I would say. So I don't think Kamala or Democrats in general have a great understanding of how economics works, I should say. And I think that there's a lot on the right that don't have a good understanding of that either. But so, for example, Kamala she's argued multiple times in her campaign to raise the corporate tax rate again. So it was lowered in Trump's first term under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act to 21%. And she had argued raising it to, I think, back up to 35%, if not higher. So that's just one example. But I just don't think that, like, what does that do? What does that accomplish?
So here's the difference. I agree with you. I think that higher corporate tax rates and whatever unrealized tax she was talking about would have been stupid economically. But the difference is that the Democrats tend to, because they are concerned with governance, I feel like the Democrats will listen if they're going to do something that's like disastrous for the economy. Like, for instance, like there's never going to be.
But that's such a general statement. Like,
except for the Green New Deal. Like, I mean, I guess it never like went through, but still, like, there's so many gung ho people, Democrats, for that. Like, but I don't know. Maybe I just proved myself wrong. I don't know. Protection from the U.S. due to civilians and contractors being on the ground for the rare earth minerals is what Ukraine gets. Well, it's fair.
Because the Democrats are concerned with governance, they'll listen.
But that's true. Well,
that's unprovable. Like,
no. I can look at the history. Biden didn't do a corporate tax increase. Biden didn't try to implement a wealth tax or unrealized capital gains. I can look at the governance.
But he would have tried to. He didn't have the support in Congress. So
he wouldn't have had the support in Congress after the election anyway. Then he wouldn't have done it. Whereas Trump will do everything he can unilaterally, like the tariffs that we're getting right now, which are more disastrous than a 35% corporation tax.
Yeah, but so Biden had what when I think the first 2 years of his first term, I think he had one or both of the houses, I think, of Congress for like the first 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, when he started in 2020, when he started in 2021.
Yeah, and he didn't do a wealth tax or a corporate tax increase.
Yeah, but my point is, he argued that he was going to do this, and change the tax plan. He didn't even push his own tax plan.
Because a lot of it probably would have been good economically, which is good because Democrats will listen if they're like.
I would argue he didn't because he wasn't doing it. He wasn't running anything. Like, I'm sorry, but I think his decline was well into swing. And if there was something on the table, they just scrapped it because there's no way he would be able to articulate it or present it. And they just sort of chugged along because they knew that Trump's was good enough. So, like, that, I mean, that's just kind of where I'm at with it.
Like, fuck, this will be a disaster. Then they probably won't do it.
Yeah, but my point is, though, is that he said he was going to do one thing and then didn't do it. And so how is that any different from what others are doing?
Because he's changing course based on what he feels is going to be best for the U.S. economy. And if I look at the economy under Biden and I compare the decisions he made to the economy under Trump, and especially now the second economy coming under Trump and the decisions that he's making and the motivation for doing so, like
you're 6
Biden
weeks
said
in
one thing and then got into office, and then we see that like, okay, well, this probably wouldn't
be the economy was pretty good under Trump. I mean, so they passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and after his first year, I think his first year in office, and the economy did really well. I mean, GDP went up, unemployment went down.
Yeah, but I mean, but it was
obviously we had COVID hit.
Yeah, but why did it do good? It was just massive deficit spending. There was a huge tax cut, and it wasn't paired with any spending cut from the government. So, of course, if you inject a fuck ton of money into the economy and you don't match that with any spending cuts, of course the economy is going to go up. But then when we cry about inflation 4 years later, now we want to blame Biden on COVID, even though like the PPP and everything was from Donald Trump, and Donald Trump ran his economy.
Yeah, well, COVID is an event that you can't quite account for. The transition between Trump and Biden and that economy, like in some respects, it's really hard to tell where all this stuff comes from, at least in my opinion. Like, I don't know. You could what he did. Was a Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in his first year. Like, that is objectively good. Like, sure, like we end up injecting a F ton of money into the economy through COVID and stimulus and all that stuff again, but like it's almost necessary. I don't know. Like I don't know where to put the blame or the onus, because again, COVID is an event that is really difficult to account for. Yeah, but deficit spending is an issue wall to wall. It's not specific to a party, unfortunately. And if we keep doing deficit spending, if we don't cut our deficit spending, we're fucked, like on a global scale.
Economy really hot for, even though he came into a good economy. Like,
I agree.
But if you agree, then how can you say there's a good reason? Like, shouldn't that have been the time if we were going to see fiscal responsibility? Shouldn't it have been Trump coming into government under Obama or after Obama? Shouldn't that have been the time?
Yeah, but I don't think Trump is necessarily like a fiscally responsible president. I'm just saying from a policy perspective, doing things like lowering the corporate tax rate, giving the child tax credit, those types, or doubling the child tax credit in many situations, lowering the tax brackets across the board, which is what the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act did. I agree with those policies more so than I do with what Kamala was advocating for, which I don't think was helpful. I mean, you increased the corporate tax rate from 21 to 35%. Overnight, which I don't know if she would have support in Congress
corporations out.
Who knows if she would have taken office. I think that's disastrous for the economy. I do.
Worse than 25% tariffs?
No, I'm not saying, but he didn't. So
he did say he was going to. Well, to be fair, he didn't say 25%. Yeah, he said 1,000% tariffs. No, he said this while he was running. We all watched him do that Bloomberg debate. He said tariffs were his favorite word. He said this over and over and over again.
Yeah, but then it takes, and this is on probably anyone who voted for Trump, you have to you have to decide, okay, is what they are saying during the campaign, is that going to be what is actually enacted? Because we all know that those don't align. And we just talked about with Joe Biden.
Yeah, but the difference is because Joe Biden governs, so he has to work with the consent of Congress. And so was Kamala Harris. She can't unilaterally raise the corporate tax rate because of some ideological commitment. But Donald Trump can unilaterally do tariffs if he uses these, emergencies as justifications for doing so. That's the difference.
But we'll see. But that's a little bit disingenuous.
Well, we're seeing it's already happened.
We'll see.
Right?
I know, but we'll see if it's constitutional. I mean, how many things are held up right now in the D.C. circuit? How many things have been challenged?
Wait, what do you mean constitutional? I didn't say it was illegal. I'm just saying that if you have an emergency now, Trump can do these things unilaterally, right? I think it is legal right now. The Congress had
Oh, okay. We got to be careful where we're going now, because there was a lot of things that were done unilaterally when COVID hit. Nobody said anything, and if you did speak up about it, you got in big trouble. You're a conspiracy theorist, you're a crazy person. How could you think that? We're here to help. So I don't really have much sympathy when people start talking about unilateral decisions being made by, it doesn't matter who it is, president, whatever. Do I think he should do it? Do I think he should implement those tariffs? No. Tariffs aren't inherently bad. I don't think it's the way out of this. Wanting to change, bring American industry back to encourage American investment, I think is important. Trying to get these countries to invest in, like especially Mexico, into helping with border security is super important. Again, I just disagree with the methods, but we'll see like what the ends are to this. We don't really know.
Have to change the law. They've granted this authority to the president, and now he's exercising it. But I think I'm just saying that like Trump has the ability to come through unilaterally. Like you have two people running for office. One says, if I'm elected, I'm going to find you with a pistol. I'm going to shoot you. And the other guy says, if I'm elected, I'm going to make sure that you're going to get charged with a crime. You're going to go to court, and I bet they're going to execute you. Right? These two things are completely different. Right? One person is pointing to a process. The other person is saying they're going to do it on their own. Kamala and Biden are working within the system to pass these acts or whatever. And Trump is just doing whatever he can.
They're so much better because they're going to hire someone to do it and use the system to kill you and not just do it themselves. Great argument. Great argument. You're so like people like, I wonder if he hears himself or if he just just talks
Unilaterally as president.
I think he's trying to push the envelope a lot on what he can do unilaterally, but but you're speaking in too much absolutes here. So it's not like
wait, hold on, real quick.
No.
When you say absolutes, I can justify every single thing I said with like 400 examples. What do you mean by that?
No, here's what I mean. I think you'll agree with me here. So my point is you're acting like when a Democrat like Biden or Kamala gets into office, they are just content to work within the system, use Congress when necessary, do X, Y, and Z, as if they don't push the limit a little bit as well about what's allowed or what's not allowed, and try to work with outside the system when necessary. And there's going to be pushback constitutionally at times, but there's a ton of examples of that. So yeah, while Trump as a president, to his, and I think this is a negative about him, he pushes things too far and does things that perhaps are not within the system more than maybe what a Democrat president would.
Like, if we look at the past years of Biden, like what's one example of him pushing the envelope in any way comparable to the last 6 weeks?
Well, so I'm going to go back. I'm trying to think of a good example with Biden. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but the first thing that comes to mind is like the Affordable Care Act, right? So this is with Obama. So a massive piece of legislation, which I'm not even necessarily opposed to.
Okay, hold on, wait. But even if you want to bring this up, because even if you want to bring this up as an example, the ACA at least was passed by Congress. So that's a totally different.
Yeah, but it was passed by Congress, pushed by Obama, and they didn't know the constitutionality by which it would even be supported. So my point is like you're pushing something that are we going to try to support it under the Commerce Clause? We're going to try to support it as a tax upon the American people, whatever. We're pushing something through that we don't know whether it's even constitutional or not, and it will get reviewed.
Sure,
but we don't know.
But don't you think there's a huge difference? How is it different between getting a congressional majority to pass an act supported by the president versus just the president unilaterally acting? There's a huge difference. No.
Well, no, the president unilaterally acting is allowed under the Constitution. So the Constitution governs when a president can unilaterally.
I'm not saying whether or not well, we don't know in all these circumstances so far where they're being challenged with TROs. But I'm just saying, you asked me what's the difference. Well, the difference is one man doing a thing to push the envelope as much as he can, in ways that are probably legal, versus a guy pushing the envelope with a.
I think now you're getting into morals and ethics, though. He is allowed to unilaterally wield power. I guess we could. You can have a discussion about whether you like that or not, but like he's allowed to do it, But now you're just getting into like, well, do you think it's okay? Like, well, I mean, I guess the argument is, well, Democrats are so nice and good because they will ask the majority. Whereas like, well, all this comes down to is I don't like this guy, so he can't do that. Obama's got a nice smile and he speaks well. He's got a nice smoking voice, so we should be happy with that. Like if Trump were a handsome white guy without the turkey gizzard neck and the makeup, it would be much more acceptable. But he's not. He's not a handsome guy. So it's the same thing. Ugly guys are creepy, but when a good-looking guy does it, it's fine. It's what this kind of is coming down to.
Act with a huge piece of legislation passed by the whole Congress. I think that's a far different thing, right?
It's different in kind a little bit. I mean, it
a little bit. There's a difference between a whole congressional act passed and the amount of agreement that you need across both sides of the aisle to pass a thing versus just one man unilaterally with the stroke of a pen making huge.
Also, a lot of times this stuff doesn't happen like it doesn't just happen like it. Especially in the U.S., a lot of times people do this like because they know that their constituents want it, not just because they want it. I think that's also an important point, and maybe that's just me being naive.
Changes to the international order and the economy?
I agree that there's difference in as far as the number of people that need to agree to pass it. My point is from a constitutional perspective, there's just as much constitutional gray area of Congress getting involved in something like that, and then some of Trump's executive actions. So, because both are given constitutional authority to do certain things under the Constitution, just depends on the article that you look at.
Right.
And so my point is that there's constitutional gray areas all the time, and that's why, in a lot of legislation, they include expedited review provisions where they say this doesn't even have to go to the normal trial court. It goes right up to whatever circuit court for review, because we know it's constitutionally very vague or very gray.
Sure,
so
but I mean, at the end of the day, the ACA survived Supreme Court review, so
as a tax, which is not what they would. So the only way it survived is as a tax. It
survived as a Supreme. So I mean, like that, the Supreme Court is a law. They interpret the Constitution, which is the law of the land. I mean, we can not like it, but I mean, it survived the constitutional review, right?
I actually do like it. So I actually don't think the ACA is necessarily a bad thing at all. I think it. In fact, I wouldn't even be. But
even if I'm just saying real quick, like the comparison of the ACA, which was however many decades ago, right, a decade and a half ago, comparing the ACA, which was it was legislation passed by Congress, supported by the president, reviewed by the Supreme Court, and okayed, to compare that versus Trump's actions in 6 weeks that have already got multiple temporary restraining orders issued against the government. I just feel like this is like a night and day comparison. It's a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you package it. Yeah, I mean, like I said.
Yeah, I'll say this again. Problem. Destiny doesn't like executive orders when it is Trump doing them, but had no problem with Biden or Obama using them. Executive orders do often get judicial review, co-equal branches. Yeah, and I was saying earlier, like one of the big issues here is that you're going from one extreme to the other, and one of the arguments was, and what they're kind of trying to debate here is, like would there be like what would you have liked to see, or what would have Kamala done that might have been a little bit better? And quite honestly, it like Destiny was going to argue that it wouldn't have been as crazy of a 6 weeks, and I basically said, well, yeah, of course, because she would have just ridden off the coattails of Biden's administration, her administration, essentially, and just there's nothing to undo, so. But since you have two competing factions headbutting each other every 4 years, of course you're going to get the swing back and forth. Like it's going to be jarring to those who are not conservative, who are progressive.
You're trying to put me in the box of like defending Trump's executive orders, which I'm not doing. I'm just saying that the absolute statements that you were making as far as Democrat presidents kind of work within the confines of the law and work as governors, those types of things, like they'll push the boundaries in many ways just as much as Republican presidents have.
100%.
Sure, I just feel like that hasn't been demonstrated yet. If the ACA was joint legislation by Congress, it's way different than pushing the boundaries of executive power. Like if Biden would have been like
pushing
Trump,
the boundaries of legislative power.
Sure, but that requires the legislature. That's a whole ass branch of government working with you, not just one man in the White House, right?
Yeah, but I don't think Trump is going to issue an executive order that revolutionizes the healthcare in America.
Yeah, this goes to my point, saying like presidents, like they put out executive orders based on generally what their constituents want. It's not just like, oh, hey, as an individual person, like I want to do this and this is what we're doing. Like that I would agree is a red flag for some maybe fascistic activity, or like in lines of like Hitler, but we haven't seen that. These are things that like people have wanted. Like now, maybe you can argue that the tariffs is not, like I don't think anyone really wants a 25% tariff to Mexico or Canada, or, without some reasonable explanation. But
Trump tried to issue an executive order rescinding birthright citizenship. Why would he not?
Yeah, but like again, that's I think that's very different than, like, in other words, so birthright citizenship aside, which is obviously it's a cut and dried 14th Amendment issue. It's not going anywhere. I mean, the courts have already settled that issue, so that's not going to go anywhere. Which shows that our system is working as it should. A president trying to do something that is outside of his constitutionally given authority to do, it's going to be shot down. There's no way that's going through. Mm-hmm. But transforming an entire sector of the economy, which is what the ACA did, is a pretty huge deal. And I don't think even in Trump's skewed worldview that he would try to do something like that through executive order. Like he knows that would have to go through the proper legislative channels.
Right.
And so,
well, maybe only
I'm not arguing that. I'm not arguing this the same thing. I'm just arguing that each party has been willing to play outside the lines and try to push things through in certain ways. Yes. And sometimes they're allowed constitutionally.
It's a flaw in the system. It's a bug in the system. And like, Destiny needs to realize that, like, this is an issue on both sides, and that's okay, but like the Democrats aren't like they're just like different place. Like what Matt is saying is like Trump might be in the executive branch trying to do it, but like the Dems might be in Congress doing it. It's still within the government. It's within a major branch of the government. Still an issue. So again, Canada has tariffs on almost everything we export to them, including booze and dairy products at rates sometimes of 200%. Trump has so far used them to call that out and tried to level the playing field. That's interesting. I didn't realize that. I'm interested to see like what the average like tariff on goods are. So. And I don't know exactly, like, I'd be interested to see what we get from them.
Sometimes they're not by the courts. And so, you have to let things fall where they may. I mean, that is the reality.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I agree. I don't see that both sides have been playing by the same rules here. I feel like especially under Trump, they've been pushing this way, way, way beyond in ways that I think, especially if you're.
This is why I like Matt, because like he might lean more conservative, but like he's agreed with him. He said, "Oh, I like the ACA. I've liked some stuff that Biden's done. I've like, you know what I mean? Like he recognizes that both sides like are doing something good, or he likes things that both sides are doing." Destiny's so locked in on his ideas. Like conservatives they're such abhorrent creatures that we can't trust them. They're operating way outside the lines, especially Trump. Like this is why, like he's a smart guy, but he's blinded by his personal bias, his hatred for conservatism.
A constitutional guy should make you very worried or very afraid.
Oh, I've posted many videos on I think the constitutional issues with a lot of what Trump's trying to do. Yeah, I'm very concerned about that. He's been using executive orders that far exceed the authority granted to him within the Constitution.
Sure.
I think I did a whole video on the birthright thing.
I mean, the executive order of him
agree.
literally saying that him and the attorney general are the law and the last interpreters of the law, like totally trying to usurp the judiciary. That's pretty wild.
He's not trying to usurp the judiciary. Like again, this is one of the problems with Destiny is like Trump is a horrible he's a horrible communicator. Like everyone knows that. Like Trump has never overridden, and this is why Trump is not a fascist. Like people need to understand like what fascism is. When the checks and balances have been put in place and he's been overridden, he's never, as far as I know, has never used his authority to overrule that or never mobilize military to say you're wrong. Actually, Supreme Court's ruling. Congress. No, he's never like fascist governments mobilize their military and use authority to dismiss checks and balances. Trump has not done that. Like, and that's one of the things that's really annoying to like hear about when people start talking like this. Like Trump may have said that, but like he's using it as like like he's puffing his chest, right? It's like this machismo thing that he's trying. I'm probably not going to bring it up.
Where he said,
but
wait, what was the one where he like quoted Napoleon and basically said he was
you
like
can't break the law if you're saving the country? Yeah.
Yeah, right. No, and I think it's super dangerous rhetoric. And I did a whole video on that one too, actually. And the responses I got from MAGA were, hey, Trump's just trying to rile feathers. He doesn't actually want to do that or anything, which is, you could say that about anything. It's like
thanks, Brahma.
What do they call it? The gap theory, where like you can just explain away anything as if he's just kind of talking crap.
Sure. Okay, then I'm curious, I guess like one final question I would have then. What could Trump do that would cross the line where you're like, okay, fuck, now this wasn't worth voting for him?
I think that, so a lot of my background is
in
the business economics side of things. So the tariff thing, the tariff conversation, I think if that gets any worse, and what I mean by worse is if these tariffs, for example, on Canada and Mexico become just indefinite, or we start putting tariffs on the EU or EU countries that seem just completely out of left field and not based, like you said, in any national security concerns or anything. And this keeps going. So in other words, it becomes more than just like a leverage, quote unquote, leverage tactic. And I know you argue with the leverage thing, and I do too.
And also just to be clear, because it's not just a leverage thing, it's already happened. We have these tariffs are here now. So how long would they have to stay before you're like, okay, well, fuck, this was just not good.
I don't know about a number of days. But see, like, I know you're trying to corner me into a position, like if the tariffs are here 15 days, then I think, whatever. I think that you constantly get new information.
So mad. And so this is what Brahma sent me. And again, I don't know, like I'd have to verify these, and the tariffs Canadians have on American products. Now, that's not a flat 25% tariff, but it's from pretty high tariffs on milk, cheese, butter, chicken. So what this essentially does is says, get Canadian products, buy Canadian cars. I tried looking up real quick these numbers elsewhere, but they don't break them down like this. So that's why I'm always hesitant to get information on Twitter because I don't know where this comes from. But yeah.
Anchor point, but is using that to, for example, try to raise revenue for America. I think that's when it becomes a major issue. And I certainly I have been, but I'll continue to be super critical of it and be like, like this could have been a mistake. This could have been a mistake.
Okay. And I guess my only frustrating point, to reiterate again then, is that like the issue that we had with Kamala was that she was saying some things, and it's possible that maybe they would have tried to do these things, and just the possibility that some of these actions might have been bad, even if they wouldn't have been able to do it, that's enough to say, like, I could never vote for that. The 35% corporate tax rate hike, which I don't think she would have done. I don't even know if you think she would have gotten that through Congress. That's enough to be afraid of it. But Trump, who's already done these tariffs, already has more tariffs announced for the EU in April, has
after he took office. So my point is,
no, Trump was talking about tariffs before he took office. Why are we saying after? He said this before. Tariffs was his favorite word. He said it before he got elected.
No, I know, but Kamala said these things before she would have gotten elected. So my point is, they both. But
Kamala can't unilaterally raise the corporate tax rate. She can't do that.
But yeah, of course. But like the president's, like, it's the bully pulpit. They can try to do whatever they want, right? They can push Congress to try to do certain things, and they can do X, Y, and Z. And when Trump talked about tariffs, like, you didn't know what he was going to do. You didn't know if he was going to actually do what he said he was going to do. Trump says a lot of things that he doesn't do. The candidates on the left say a lot of things that they don't end up doing. And like we just talked about with Biden, and like how he was going to change the tax plan X, Y, and Z, and he couldn't get the support. So like there's a lot of things that are said, and you have to figure out, like, okay, what do you think is actually going to happen? What is not? I mean, we're 6 weeks in. We're in a very short time period. I think that there's going to be possibly some good things that happen. I think there's probably been some good things that have already happened, and you're going to always look at it from kind of
what are some good things?
lens.
What are some good things that have already happened?
I told you. I said I think that a lot of what Elon is trying to do in the executive branch is a positive. So the executive branch needs to be reduced in size.
But what? We don't even have a size in mind. How big should it be? Is 1 million too big?
It's go up. It's go up. There's not the opportunity to ball.
Shit.
And so that's the thing that can probably destroy straightment. Like you didn't know what he was going to do. You didn't know if he was going to actually do what he said he was going to do. Trump says a lot of things that he doesn't do. The candidates on the left say a lot of things that they don't end up doing. And like we just talked about. So like there's actually going to happen. What is not? I mean, we're 6 weeks in.
What are some good things?
lens.
What are some good things that have already happened?
I told you. I said I think that a lot of what Elon is trying to do in the executive branch is a positive.
Yeah. So he wants to know how many people. Like the point of Doge is to figure that out. The point is to find the efficiency issues. Like, I want to see some real results come of it, and I'm skeptical that anything will. But I do think so far that what we're seeing these wasteful programs being cut. Like I think it's a net positive. Again, it's going to be another thing that if it's bad, you're not going to see it for a couple of years until it's actually done. But I do believe that what he's doing is helping push in the right direction. It's like, hey, this is a whole wasteful department. We don't need this anymore. This other department can absorb it and do it. These guys are working half days, make them work a full day, and then the second half of the day they're doing this. Whatever it is. Like that's a very general example, but it still stands. Like there's plenty of places that efficiency can be picked up.
So the executive branch needs to be reduced in size.
But what? We don't even have a size in mind. How big should it be? Is 1 million too big? Should it be bigger? Is it larger than other branches?
I don't think it's a number. I think that you need to go through and see what is the fraud, waste, and abuse that's happening.
Okay, but you can not finding fraud, waste, and abuse, right? That's not what they've done so far. Like what fraud, waste, and abuse was found in USAID before they cut the funding for it?
Yeah, I haven't seen. Like I said, the USAID.
Nobody's seen it. Nobody's seen any of it. Or any of it. Or the U.S. Treasury payments being froze. What for waste, fraud, and abuse they found? Nothing so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. But over time, I think that looking to cut certain things, even if it's not fraud, waste, and abuse, is cutting waste and too many things that we don't need.
Yeah.
And I think that's a positive thing in general, because
Isn't that what
fraud, waste, and abuse are three different things. Like waste, like fraud, like you don't want, like I don't think you're gonna find, well, you'll probably find fraud, maybe not widespread. Waste and abuse kind of go hand in hand. Like there could be wasteful spending where you're just like paying for the same thing, or you're continuing to pay for something that like was a program from a decade ago that just got overlooked because people aren't monitoring it. I believe on Joe Rogan he said that like there's a few programs they found where again there was money being written to people, corporations or whatever, that had no description. It was essentially a blank check going out year after year, months after months. Like that's waste. Abuse, like abuse being like the USAID, like they're getting aid for these countries, but it's not going all to the actual aid. It's going to other things. So like if you can reduce the abuse there, like sure, let's help out countries because we have the money to do so, but let's not allow people to like, well, let's not use it to overthrow governments.
the OIGs were for, the Office of Inspector Generals? Like,
yeah, maybe, but like this is pushing that a little bit for sure. And you can argue with the methods for sure. I think that it probably stands more within Congress, and that's probably what needs to happen. But this is pushing the issue to the forefront, which needed to happen. We can't continue going in deficit spending. People think that this can just go on indefinitely, and it cannot. The only reason, so let me put it to you this way. The only reason that the United States right now is where it's at economically is that people want to, other countries and then you and me, other people want to buy United States bonds, and the interest rates are super low, right? So the United States can be where it's at. The moment that there's less confidence in America economically because of that, interest rates go up. There's not the opportunity to borrow nearly as cheaply as we've been borrowing, and all of that starts to we death spiral. And so that's the thing that can probably destroy America faster than anything else. So we're talking about all this other stuff.
That's probably the first hyperbolic thing that Matt said, but it's probably been the most true. Like when he said death spiral for the U.S. like economy on the world stage. But like that's why this conversation's so one-sided. Like Destiny wants to yell and scream and like engage in hyperbole. Matt can't keep him engaged because he's not willing to do that. He's willing to actually side with him on stuff and talk to him like a rational human being. And Destiny's not interested in that. He wants to go fisticuffs. Like I said, Matt is interested in giving him the wet willy. Destiny wants to put on the brass knuckles and hit the shit out of him. Like it's just kind of unfortunate. Like I said, he's still sitting there. He's bored. He's probably playing a video game right now. His chat's probably egging him on to do something, calling this guy a cuck or something. So
stuff like, this rate or that rate or like X, Y, or Z needs to happen. But when the rubber meets the road, if America does not get control of its spending problem, eventually it's gonna teeter off the ledge. And so what does America need to do to get a hold of its spending problem? I think the executive branch is a great place to start.
Yeah.
It's just like that. It's just like I don't understand anything that was just said. I'm just so confused because the current projections are like $20 trillion of additional debt over the next 10 years. That's what the current projections are because he wants to extend the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. He wants to extend that. We don't see any real cuts being made from government. We can talk about the federal government all we want, but the reality is non-discretionary spending makes up 70% of our budget, and we're not cutting Medicare and Social Security. And we haven't. But
like the left accuses that. So like,
I'm not talking about the left accuses. I'm just saying that realistically, do you think the Republicans are asking for a $4 trillion increase in the debt ceiling? Or did we already get it? So Trump hasn't shown himself as being somebody that can effectively manage a budget at all in his own personal life, whether it's through multiple bankruptcies or whether through the federal government when he came in with a hot economy and still ran larger and larger deficits. And all the projections are that the deficit's going to get massive even more. So I just don't see how, if that's your issue, I don't know. Yeah, it just.
Well, you asked me.
So the point, he's missing the point because he's too stuck in the idea that Trump bad. The point being made here is that like the biggest correction that can be made to the economy is, or like the most tangible one is reducing the size of the executive branch through Doge. Allow them to essentially go through and find the waste, find the fraud, find the abuse, and cut that out the best you can. You know, or bring it to someone's attention so it can be dealt with and handled very quickly, because any money that you can keep, and this is why people, if you're smart, like you're not asking for that $5,000 check that they're saying. Like, no, we don't need that. We don't need the $5,000 check. We need to keep our position in the global market. We need to put that towards something that's here domestic that can help us, that can contribute to our GDP. That's what we need. And like I said, I know a lot of people who are like, I don't want the $5,000 check. Like, keep it and infuse it into our economy.
What I thought was something good that the administration has done within the first 6 weeks. And I think bringing those issues to the fore and having a real conversation about, are these specific departments or agencies necessary?
But we're not having a real conversation about it. That's the issue. If you want to do something about your deficit, your fiscal policy, there's two things that you can do. You can either increase your income or you can decrease your spending. We are never, and I'm sure you agree, we are never saving a significant amount of money, even if we had a godlike figure come down and find every amount of waste, fraud, and abuse in the.
It is definitely an oversimplistic view of it. I mean, he's not wrong, but you know, in the case of your own home, absolutely, it's a little bit more complex, I think, on the world stage. And again, I'm not simping for America and its budget and how it does things, because it's certainly wasteful in a lot of ways. But this is one avenue to directly affect this. Do I wish we were not involved in wars? Yes. The problem is that you're already, it's like a president comes in and they're absorbing they're taking over debt from someone else. You know, it's not like he comes in with a blank slate and a budget and then everything's fine. He's taking all this on. You can't just remove defense spending.
Federal government, what is it, 3%, maybe 4%, 5% if we're generous, of our discretionary spending. Like, that's it. You're not saving much. Like, and Trump hasn't talked about cutting any spending for real, and we're dramatically decreasing our income.
I agree.
So there's no path forward. How do we see right now that we think the deficit is going to get smaller, or the debt's going to start to go the other way? The last surplus we had was under a Democrat president. It was under Clinton.
But there also has to be a balance, right? Like, we need to be able to export goods to make money, like, to people around the world. We also need people to buy our goods. So there's a give and take here, because we can't just, and this is like, it's not just free market. Like, we don't just like give and take from other places, or, you know, buy and sell from other places. Like, there are tariffs imposed on us. We impose tariffs on others. Like, all these things are factors in it. So increasing your income isn't as like simple as like, just increase your income, bro. Just make more.
Yeah, but to say like, oh, you know, at most we're getting 3 to 4%, you know, from cutting spending, I don't think that's nothing. I mean, I think that's important to look at. And by the way, I actually think that we need to look at increasing, you know, how can we tax the wealthy more? I think that's an important conversation to have, and I don't think it's probably through the income tax. So are there ways to get? It's probably some type of consumption tax. I think that it has to be
consumption tax. How would you target a consumption tax towards wealthy people?
I don't know. You'd have to try to. I think there's probably ways you could try to figure it out.
Why not just like a progressive income tax just be like the easiest way to do it? I feel like that's like,
because he's probably going to explain it here. Like, the very, very wealthy that people are trying to go after don't have a conventional income the way, like, you're essentially taxing middle America more, or in like the real, you're taxing high income earners more, not the ultra wealthy, because they're making money on assets that are tax free, and they're not getting taxed on it until it's capital gains and they sell them. Like, this is something that Destiny should know, and I'm surprised that he is even making this point.
like the easiest.
No, I don't think a progressive income tax would be good at all to do, because millionaires and billionaires don't make income like the rest of us do. So like Elon Musk, he's worth, how many hundreds of billions of dollars.
Yeah, and it's not liquid. Like, yeah, that's how much he's worth, but he can't just like go to the bank and pull all that money out. Like, it's like he'd have to liquidate.
What's his income? Almost nothing. And
Sure,
so
but
the way that
there's two things. One is I don't think that we are trying to make all the money of the government by just taxing the handful of billionaires we have. But two, there's other policies you could have as well. For instance, I think that you shouldn't be able to borrow against anything that you haven't stepped the basis up in. I think that's an easy way to get rid of the whole borrow bullshit, where you can borrow money against your appreciated assets without ever paying tax on it, and then boom, you solve it.
Yeah, but so, well, I want to go back though to like I don't see. Yeah, you maybe solve that problem, but overall, I think you need a broader way to get at the wealth of the very wealthy in the country. I actually I agree with that. I think that there's a lot of wealth sitting out.
Yeah, I'll agree with Matt here. I don't think it's bad to want to try and extract a little bit more from that ultra wealthy. I do think there's a way to get them to pay more, but the income tax or progressive income tax is not the way to do it. And again, because they don't make this. But unrealized capital gains is stupid too, because, then you're getting it. Like, some people own multiple homes, it's just how they do things. And now you're going to start taxing them year after year on something that, like, it might be worth this much. Like, ooh.
Out there that's just really hard to get at.
That's a slippery
so many
slope.
tax shelters for wealthy people. So whether that's real estate or just investment in general, whether it's investment in companies in the stock market, that's really hard to tax. And I think Kamala was trying to get at that by proposing this unrealized capital gains tax, where you could tax the gains without it before it was ever even realized on people that I think had over 100 million net worth. But that particular method, I don't think would have been helpful either. So I think you have to find some
seen, is there a single thing that Trump has suggested to increase revenues in the government besides these tariffs?
No, the only I've seen is tariffs. Yeah, I haven't seen anything else.
And so, and if assuming that, there's a hidden third way to increase your tax revenues as well, right? Which is to increase the size of your economy. And we saw the Atlanta Fed or whatever was projecting a 3% contraction. So I don't know. I don't understand if like budgets are a thing we care about. I just have no idea. Because you said he hasn't even suggested a single thing to increase revenue. So I don't know, man. It seems pretty dicey.
Yeah, no, I agree, but I just think I don't understand like the situation that we are in. So I think that we had two candidates that were, I don't think good, either of them, truly. I honestly don't think Kamala would have been any better. I think that she would have tried to, maybe she would have tried to work within the system a little bit in her first couple months. That's very possible.
Because it was her system. Like, I think that's why.
But like, I don't see her dramatically improving the position of the United States in her first, in her first term as president.
Yeah. Do you think that Biden did a good job? Do you think, like, for instance, all these things that Trump is taking credit for now, do you think the CHIPS Act was good to incentivize local manufacturing?
I don't know. I would need to do a deeper dive into the CHIPS Act. Obviously I've heard of it. I don't know if it's good or not. I think that incentivizing particularly companies that are working towards our energy independence is a positive thing for the most part. Okay. And I think that Trump will do that. I really do. I think that he's talked about that. Obviously, Musk is all for that. So to the extent that Musk has Trump's ear, I think that there's going to be some movement in that direction. I think that Trump is,
with all the energy that we get from Canada, do you think that these tariffs are going to have a negative impact on our energy consumption in the United States?
I do. Yeah. And that's why I think they're terrible. I think they're absolutely awful. But I think that I would say within the next 10 years, and I'm not an expert in this area, but I'd say within the next 10 years, there's a very real possibility, if we incentivize enough, if we incentivize private industry enough in this area, that solar becomes a replacement for a lot of this. I really do.
Yeah, but Biden made the largest green energy investments ever, and Trump is talking about clean coal. How do we compare these two things here?
So Matt is making the argument that Musk has Trump's ear and that we could see a change there. So this point here seems stupid. We are not yet, as far as I understand it, we are not at the point where we can directly, at least in the next 10 years, swap out fossil fuels for, unless there's something crazy that we don't know about. Like unless you're powering that rocket through solar energy, I don't think you can replace fossil fuels. I think that's kind of silly to say. I think we need more investment in nuclear energy, especially with the advancements in AI. You know, I think we need to reopen pipelines that were, to Canada. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think it's hard to compare.
Well, I feel like it's really easy. If you look at the infrastructure bill that Biden passed, it was the largest investment in green energy in the history of the United States, and Trump doesn't even like green energy. He blames it for the Texas power grid problems.
Yeah, I think a lot of that's rhetoric, though. I don't think Trump is opposed to green energy. I think you've seen that. You've seen him talk very positively about what Tesla's done. So I think that he talks as an entertainer to appease his audience.
Yes.
And so I think you think Trump's anti-green energy? Like you think
yes.
he would?
I think he's talked about clean coal a ton. He's talked about how important it is to open up our oil reserves more, even though we produce more energy and ship more.
Because you don't have the ability to replace fossil fuels with solar. It's not happening. Like you can make the transition to it, but like you need something to sustain you while you make the transition. And California is the failed experiment of, hey, we're going to have this by this. Like it's not happening. They can't even keep the lights on for the most part. And whether that's because of, mismanagement on the side of, their fossil fuels or their power, the solar power grid or whatever, like, sorry, but like, I don't think it's a scam. Like it's definitely helpful. Like solar works, but the problem is like, again, if you're talking about switching, it just doesn't have this like, it is capable of powering your home. Like solar will power your home. There's a storage problem, but the amount of energy that we consume versus how much like it pulls in is totally different, right? Like I can generate more electricity with fossil fuels quicker than I can with solar. So that's one of the big issues. And like with AI, we use AI all the time and everything. And we need huge server banks to do these things. Solar can't power it. They need something like nuclear, which can generate a shitload of energy really fast. And yeah, you need other parts of the world to do so as well. That's a good point.
More energy under Biden than we have in all of U.S. history.
And just investing in it is great, but like it doesn't mean that anything will come of it necessarily.
Is unable to pass any major legislation at all about infrastructure, but anything pointing to helping green energy. I believe the Trump admin has started to rescind, I think, some of the funding that was on the table for solar energy.
Yeah, we need to check on that.
The only thing he said positive, he said positive things about Tesla. Yeah, but his best friend is Elon Musk. I don't know if that's an explicit support of green energy. I don't see any movement in that admin to support green energy. He talks about how the whales are dying and they need therapy from the solar or from the windmills. Like is Trump the guy we're looking to?
Did he really?
Yeah, is Trump the guy we're looking to for green energy?
No, I'm not saying Trump's the guy we're looking to for green energy. I'm just saying I don't think he's necessarily opposed to it. I think he speaks to who he needs to speak to get elected. He's a
politician.
He's a pragmatist in that way.
Yeah.
People will say what they need to say. So like you saw during the campaign where Biden and then Kamala was like backtracking on all their statements about being anti-fracking, right? Like, yeah, of course they probably are anti-fracking, but they're not going to go out and say that. So they got to backtrack because they got to get voters in Pennsylvania.
Well,
so
when you say backtracking, hold on. But the Biden administration supported fracking. Those were statements that Kamala had made in like 2019. Again, the Biden administration was like, we support our local domestic energy.
Of course, but like you saw Kamala, I guess, backtracking on it, when she was the nominee. And the point
Right.
is,
Our
like,
statements in
regardless of
2019. She's not backtracking over the past 4 years.
a
I just
few
think she said
years.
what? Well,
It's not
she
too
was
long
running
ago,
as a candidate to the
2019.
left of Biden, though, and the American electorate rejected that message, so she changed her policies accordingly, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
But,
As
That's
opposed to
cope,
Donald Trump calls it the
destiny.
green new scam. Like,
that's proving my point, though. Like you're proving my point to say that, like, people say one thing, and then when the message lands or doesn't land, especially if they've already gotten into office, they'll change their perspective.
Yeah.
My point is, like, I don't think Trump is necessarily. He will say what he needs to say to get elected, just like a lot of candidates will. And then when he gets into office, he'll do X, Y, and Z. I don't think he has anything personally against green energy. I just think that that's something that, it might not line up exactly with what he said on the campaign trail, but whose time in office does.
okay, I guess
Right?
we'll see.
I mean, come on, like,
I think he obviously hates green energy. He talks about the green new scam constantly. He's obsessed with unlocking clean coal and unlocking domestic energy production for oil and all that. Like,
he's opposed to, like, the Green New Deal, but, like, that's very different than being supportive of green energy, supportive or unsupportive of green
he
energy.
doesn't even know what the Green New Deal is. He just doesn't like green energy because he identifies it with Democrats.
Well, yeah, because proposed legislation like the Green New Deal has identified with Democrats. It's not. It's a completely different thing. I think he talks about green stuff because it gets his base riled up. He talks being anti-green stuff, but when the rubber meets the road, no pun intended, he's going to support what he needs to support to that he feels that the country will do the best on. And I think that you're seeing so many advances in solar technology right now, particularly solar, that within the next 5 to 10 years, Trump, who I think is a pragmatist, and if only being a pragmatist
after these 25% tariffs.
No, listen,
the pragmatism.
Destiny, chill out, dude.
We will see. I agree. It looks bad now. I 100% agree with you. But my point is, he's a pragmatist for public opinion. So he will do. So I think there will become a point, and maybe it's during his term, maybe it's during the next president's term, where you'll have where solar technology will get so good, right, and it will be so efficient, the transition from solar energy into fueling everything essentially, that he'll have to about face on that. So I just don't think it's wise to say, or not wise, but I just don't think there's no basis to say, like, he's going to be opposed to all that.
Okay, except all the words and speeches and everything he's given, but we're assuming he's going to change that because he's pragmatic.
Yeah, he likes to be liked.
Okay. Any other final thoughts or questions or anything?
You have anything?
No, I think that was my final question. I think.
No, I've just been bored for the last hour.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for the chat. Do you want to plug your channel or TikTok or anything, or?
Yeah. So, like I said, I'm I think at Matt Dearden 49 on TikTok. So yeah, check me out. Appreciate it. Appreciate this conversation.
Yeah. Thanks. Wait. Okay. I guess I'll ask one final thing. Do you have any strong feelings about Donald Trump suing people that he doesn't like their speech on? So, like, suing the Seltzer pollster in Iowa, suing I think CNN for the Kamala Harris interview. Do these, like, worry you about, like, implications for freedom of speech at all, or?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously there's limits to freedom.
Jesus Christ. They tried to imprison him. You can sue for all the defamation and interference. F off this.
So we have criminal offenses for types of speech, but to sue pollsters.
Right. So I've not even looked into that at all. Seriously, this is the first time I've heard of the pollster stuff. I don't want to speak to that just out of ignorance. So
what about him
no
kicking
idea.
AP and Reuters out of the press office because they wouldn't call it the Gulf of America?
Did he check? Is that why he kicked him out?
Yes.
So I didn't know that either. So sounds bad.
Yeah, I would say so. Do you have any strong feelings about the Eric Adams case that got dismissed in New York, or?
So get me up to speed on that one. So Eric Adams, he's obviously was the mayor of New York.
He was facing a big federal indictment. As we know, federal indictments are pretty airtight. Part of this federal indictment was about basically stealing public funds from New York City through a scam, a Turkish guy who was fake donating money basically to get New York funds. When Trump came into office, through the deputy AG, Bovee, basically they demanded that, I think it's the Southern District of New York, rescind the charges against Eric Adams without prejudice, so they could be brought again in the future, and that they would review the charges in November after the election, because they felt that the prosecution against Eric Adams had been political, even though they had no issues with anything that was actually brought up in the case. And obviously the prosecutor in front of that case disagreed, as did a few other people in that office, who then were all fired. Because she said that it's ridiculous. This is a good indictment. I don't know why we would not do this anymore. And then it got to the point to where Bovee was in the room with like 21 different lawyers who were part of the like integrity division or whatever of the DOJ, and said, somebody here needs to rescind these charges or else I'm firing every single one of you. And it seems to be literally just a quid pro quo that now Eric Adams is going to play ball with the government, but the charges were dismissed without prejudice, so they can always be brought back, and they'll review them after the next election. Seems kind of like a horrible, bad thing, but...
Yeah, I mean, the way you explained it, for sure. Yeah, I honestly don't know much about that. So, I mean, I've heard the name, obviously, and here and there. I knew he had charges, but I didn't know much beyond that. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Do you think pardoning all the J6ers was a good idea?
And I honestly, and I'm not just saying that because I don't want to answer this, I honestly have stayed out of that space. I know the very basics of what happened. Probably a blanket. I mean, I don't agree with blanket pardons in general. I don't think that they're smart. It probably should be pretty individualized. So I guess my running answer on that would be like, no, I don't necessarily agree with a blanket pardon for all J6ers, but I've not looked into the specifics of it.
Gotcha. Okay.
I mean, do you?
No, of course not. I think I would say it was an attempted coup, but.
Wait, J6 itself was an attempted coup.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
Yeah. No, I think Pence did the right thing. I've always stayed on that. I think that was, I don't know what I think else of Pence as a politician, but I think that was a tough moment. And I think it did take some courage to do what he.
I think this was good discussion. Honestly, this is the most chill I've seen Destiny in a while. One thing I've said is that the reason that this has been so chill is because Matt has not given him the fuel that he desires. For the past hour, he's been bored, and you can tell he's been bored because he's not all amped up. He's not like like he can't yell and scream and point. But it's unfortunate because he's trying to just have a good conversation with him, and he was just kind of trying to drag questions out of him. Go back to this here. They tried to imprison him. He can sue for all the defamation, interference, F off this. I would have answered, do you think Biden preemptively pardoning people and his family back 10 years is okay? Yeah. And I think Matt, for a lot of, Matt he's picky and choosy about what he comments on and talks about, like on his TikTok and everything. And I think he stays out of like the overall drama, and might, like, I'm sure he's familiar with this, but Matt also has been pretty good about avoiding whataboutisms. But yeah, no, it would have been something interesting to bring up. This was a good discussion. Matt Dearden is someone that I wish I could that I would like to eventually have a one-on-one conversation with. Seems like a really good dude. Yeah, I would like to pick his brain, especially after him having the conversation with him. Destiny was nice enough to humor him, but I could tell that he just wasn't. He didn't really care to engage that much, which is unfortunate. I can just imagine Destiny's chat every time Matt said, "I don't know about that." Yeah, like, and that's the thing too, is you could tell that, like, even Destiny, even to a point, just wanted him to, like, say something like really dumb, or like by Matt saying that, his chat was probably going, "See, what a fucking beta cuck. He doesn't know shit." Like, blah blah blah. Like, when I think in some respect he's not commenting on this stuff because he is a lawyer. Like, this is his, like, field of expertise, and, like, putting that stuff out there, like, it could be dangerous for his reputation. So in that way, but no, it's good. It was good. Good breakdown. This took exactly as long as I thought it would, and I was, like, debating whether I should hop on here, and do it, but I really wanted to watch this because I figured I'm not going to get a chance to for a bit. But no, that was good. It was a good discussion. I don't know how you guys felt about it. I appreciate everyone watching. We had a lot of people stop through and lurk. So to that extent, I'm very thankful that you guys dropped in. But if you're just joining, you should go back and kind of watch my commentary on it, because I do. I have my thoughts on some of this stuff, and I'm not a constitutional lawyer or anything, but as a normal person who is, like, affected by this chatter, and you kind of get my perspective on things and where I'm at. Yeah, I just wear this at night. I only wear this at night. It's like my streaming clothing now. But I should probably not anymore. Fun. Thanks, Devastator. Appreciate it, man. I'm glad you're here. Destiny is just an annoying person. Yeah, he can be. And me being charitable, like I am, like, he will make good points, and he will point out things that I agree with as well. I do agree with those guys on certain things. It's just, it is what it is, I do like, there's a lot out there that's very gray. It's not black and white. Like, that's the reality. Some of you in chat are like, "Oh, Destiny said it, so I'm just against it. Fuck him." That's fine. That's not how I generally do things. That's what I do. I'll try and do stuff like this so people can, like, get my perspective and understand my thought process on this. Gray like my beard? Yeah. And, like, my hair? Gray. I'm getting very gray. But yeah. But now, man, I appreciate y'all very much. Please, if you're watching this and you watch the whole thing, I'm very, very thankful. Leave me a message, leave me a comment on what you thought of this debate or discussion, and whether you think that Destiny has a good handle on things, or if he's just too caught up in his own bias. But yeah, I appreciate you guys for watching. It's been fun. We'll be back on Wednesday. Well, actually, we'll probably be back on Monday or Tuesday for a conversation. So check in then, and then midweek on Wednesday, 9:30 p.m. Mountain Time. Y'all be good. See ya.
I like to put stuff online.